All right, welcome back. We are COMP229. That's Web Application Development in the summer 2022 semester at Centennial, and it's week 10 of our broadcast and recording, our live session together. So let's talk about what we're doing this week, and I'll also talk about new stuff as well as things that were kind of recorded. So again, this week's evaluations, the focus of the next 2 weeks are going to be on project part 3, which is your authentication release. So up until now, you've done all this at this point. So again, you've just finished off your first release. Again, I know people have submitted this and it's not exactly where they want it to be, and that's okay. But what I want to do with you guys today, at least the people that are here, is take a look and see what you've got going on. What does your first release look like? The stuff that you submitted yesterday. And I'll give you some feedback on this because I want to try and get you guys in the right direction for your authentication release, which is going to be coming up again in 2 short weeks. It sounds like, again, a lot of time, and it is a little easier than your first release because your authentication release is just a layer on top of the stuff that you've already done for your first release. Now, there are some additional features that you're going to be implementing as well. So you're locking down some of the pages, right? That's what you're going to be doing with authentication, right? So you're right now, the first release, the expectation was that you're functional, but there's no requirement for you to have secure areas of your site. That's your first release. So functional means like most of everything is working as you want it to. It may not be pretty, but it's working, and you've got a kind of a prototype that you're working with to improve. All right, that's what your first release is all about. Your authentication release is your second release, so that means you can improve upon the stuff you've already submitted. Your first release, you can change stuff, and then what you'll be doing with your authentication release is adding a layer of protection for those the components of your website that require that control. And one of them, of course, is the ability for you, if you're making a survey site, to create surveys. You need to be registered. And the other thing is, even if you're registered, you shouldn't be able to access another registered user's surveys and modify them. You can only modify your own. So that is a kind of a different thing that we've done in the past, because in the past, when you sign up, you can modify anybody's work. Yours, it's like one big database. Here, we're not doing that. We have, when you log in, your authentication release is different in that you can only modify and access your own stuff, okay? Not somebody else's that's registered, right? So that is going to require a little bit more thought in terms of how you set up your authorization. So again, 2 parts of authentication or security is authentication, who are you, and authorization, what can you do? And you cannot, here's something you cannot do. As a registered user, you will not be able to modify, turn on, turn off someone else's surveys, turn on, turn off somebody else's tournaments. As an example, if you're doing the tournament site, you only have access to modify your own. Okay, so I can't state that enough. That is something that people get wrong when they do this one. Okay, so again, it's released now and it's due week 11. And again, that's July 31st. If you look online, it'll be Sunday, July 31st at midnight is when this one is due. Okay. Again, sitting at week 11, week 10, I mean, we're talking about the authentication release is what's happening. And let's talk about the stuff that's online. So if I look online in our course shell for week 10, you have several hours for mean authentication. So it's like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4.5, let's say easily 5 hours that's on here if you wanted to do Angular for authentication. If you're interested in watching that, I've kind of pre-recorded that for you if you're looking at doing a full mean stack at this point. That's what's up here as well. Your first weekly report and your first peer review was due on Sunday, so those are closed. But your second weekly report, because every week after the first week we started the project, is going to be due. And your first weekly report is basically, hey, what did I do? If you didn't submit your first weekly report, you get 0 on that part. And the same thing goes with your peer review. Your second weekly report is due this Sunday coming up, so a week from yesterday. And it's basically what you're doing this week. So every week there should be activities of things that you're going to pull off for your team kind of week by week. So that's what's happening with the second weekly report. And there'll be one for every week, like I said. So that is some of the stuff that we're working on today. And the other part, of course, is, well, let's talk about React, right? Because this is, I wanted, this new module I want to kind of introduce this semester is, how do we use React instead of Angular if we're going to do that? We already built a backend. So last week, if we go back to our project, just to recap of what we did. So here's last week's M2022. There we go. And you guys are this one. We built a backend API, and let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to bring up Visual Studio Code for a second. All right, so here's that backend API that we were working on last week. And last week, we were successful in building the backend and running it. And I'm just going to kind of launch this so you can see what we had, and then we'll kind of talk about other things in a second. So if I launch Mongod, right, just to show you what we did, this is just a local server that we've got going on. And then what we want to do is in here, we want to launch NodeMon. But remember what's happening is that NodeMon, when we're launching it, and if it's connected to our local database, right, here it is, localhost, right, it's connecting on port 3500. That's something that we made a change of last week. And we needed that because without port 3500, here's localhost. Localhost 3000 doesn't work because we're going to be using localhost 3000 or maybe another, that port for something else. But localhost 3500, that is the one that's running. And you can see that there are no pages here that we can utilize. We have to look at the API documentation. So if I was to go to something like API/ and then, for example, movie list, which is what we were working with, you're going to see that we're unauthorized. And this idea of authorization with token-based security was what we covered last week. We also introduced, a tool that we can use, and that tool was Postman. All right, so Postman's a great little tool that helps us with API, kind of working with an API. So if I look at, as an example, let's look at the workspace we worked on last week with, which was you guys here, section 2, here it is. And if you remember what we did last week, we had several, so the way Postman works is if you want to do a GET request, you put in the URL in here, followed by API, that's the convention, and then movie list. That's what we kind of did. And if I was to send this now, you can see we're going to get authorized. And the reason why we're authorized this way is because we also, in the authorization portion of Postman, we have a bearer token that's already been implemented. And remember, we gave the ability for users to have that bearer token work or stay logged in for a week. that was the way it worked, right? We can change that, the authorization, but we did that so that way we can prove out that if you've got the bearer token, then you get the data, which is going to be shown up as an example, as just raw JSON data. So again, notice here, one thing we didn't cover last week was we didn't really cover these things. So there's pretty, there's raw. This is kind of what it really looks like if you're going to access it. You can get a preview, almost like a built-in web page. And if you visualize, you have to set up a visualizer for this. We're not going to do that, but those are the 4 things. And pretty is the way we like to look at it so we can see what the data looks like. Okay, so that's kind of what we covered all last week on the tech side. Okay, so that's what we did. Okay, so back to this. Okay, so that's what we kind of covered. And then this week, again, we're going to be, so Mean CRUD is online, where we kind of did a sports store admin is what I kind of did, which you log into your sports store and blah, blah, blah. And you have, we kind of made online, I put together a little, kind of a store and everything else that you can put together. And the mean CRUD stuff actually adds more things in terms of I want to log in and I want to do full CRUD on my sports store. Okay, that's kind of what we did. But today we're going to talk about React. So that's kind of the main thing we're doing this week. Project components that are due. Okay, let's talk about those. So project part 3, again, that's the authentication release, due Sunday, next Sunday at midnight. So that's July 31st, two short weeks from now. And weekly report 2, individual, is due this Sunday at midnight. Weekly report 3, the next one, if I was going to copy and paste this, that's coming up too. That's going to be next Sunday. So every week there's another weekly report to do. So 2 and 3 upcoming. Please make sure you do them because they are worth up to 2% of your final grade. So please make sure that you get those done. All right, so that is our kind of high level of what we did. But the first thing I'd like to talk to you about before we get into any tech discussion is, how did your first release go? That's the first thing I'd like you to, kind of to talk with you. So I know most people, submitted their first release. I haven't looked at them yet because, again, they just were submitted yesterday. For the most part, everyone submitted on time. Some people did a little bit later than normal, but that's okay. There are some people who still have not submitted their project. There's some groups. And if you're one of those people, then please make sure you submit as soon as possible because you're losing marks every day. All right, but let's talk about the people that are here. So last week, what we did was I kind of put together just going to go up here and talk about the groups again. So I kind of put together a bunch of kind of group names. And I have Addis and Centec as an example. I also have Poll Aliens, Runner-Up, Runtimers, and Survey Horse. Those are the ones, and Mantis. Those are the ones that we kind of have up right now. There's a couple of groups, maybe some of you are part of those groups, that don't have names, Group 5 and Group 6. So is there anyone part of Group 5 and Group 6 here right now? So let's take a look. Group 6 is made up of these people, and I do see some people here that are part of Group 6. Can someone talk to maybe the name of, is that Group 5 or Group 6? I think it's Group 5. Actually, I showed you guys right now. Hold on a second. Let me just go back. Yes. So can someone talk to me about Group 5's name? So Yuntian, I think you're part of that group. And I see who else here. Who else is here right now that we've got going on? Not a lot of people that are here today from your group, just you, Yuntian. So do you have a name for your group that you can share, and then I can rename you up online? Are you there, Yuntian? Okay, good. Sure we. Okay, sure. That's interesting. For Group 6, sure we from Group 6. I'll do. So Yuntian, what is your name? What is your group name for Group 5? I'm just going to modify Group 6 and kind of change the name to Sure We. That's interesting. And what I'll do, like I did for the other groups last time, is up online on COMP229. Remember that there is right here, there is also a set of groups that I can put together. So for SureWay, I will add or modify one of the teams here. So you can actually kind of connect to it, or I'll add it in. So I'll say, let's make a new voice channel. We'll call it, the same thing you talked about, which is SureWay. Create the group. So that way you guys can go and use this as your chat channel if you need to. And I may meet with you guys to discuss your group there as well. Okay. Okay, but Yuntian, what about yours for group 5? What is your name for Group 5, Yuntian? Do you have a name? How about that? And if you don't, that's okay. I can leave it as is. I'm going to move on now because I got to ask people about what they did, and I can't pause too much longer here. All right. Well, maybe Yuntian will get back to us with that kind of stuff, and maybe not. We'll see how it goes. But for sure, we only have one group that doesn't have a name right now. It's group 5. Hopefully, they'll come back with that. So let's go over the people that are here. So I've seen some other group leaders that are here and other people that are part of your groups. Does anyone want to volunteer so I can take a look at their site? I will bring this up online right now, and then I don't want to pick random people. I prefer that you guys kind of step up. Is there anyone that's willing for me to take a look at their stuff and kind of go over what you have so far with everybody? So just to do a bit of a demo. Anybody? I know it's early, and I'm pressuring you guys at 8:45 in the morning on a Monday, but it's we got to do it because this way we can see what it looks like.
Professor, I can talk.
Okay, Famid, what's your group name?
Runner.
Which one? Oh, runner up. Okay, good, very good. All right. Well, let me then, if you want to give me, can you put it in the chat what you've got in there? So put your a link. Do you have a link to your live site or no? Okay, go ahead, and we'll bring it up here so everyone can see. And this is great because once we start with going down this path, guys, you'll see how we're going to roll. And I want to give you feedback first before we do anything else, because this way, at least we have an example of some, some of the stuff that we're doing. Okay, Famid, anytime you're ready. If you want to post that in there in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah. In the meantime, for the other people, be ready because I'm going to ask you to. So, I know that Famid and his group are going to talk about it. Anyone else? Who's number 2? Who's going to go second after Famid? I just want to kind of look at other people's sites, like at least a couple of them. Ricardo's there. Okay, no problem. Or if you want to go now, I mean, Famid's taking kind of taking a bit of time. If you want to start off now, Ricardo, I'm okay with that too. We can wait and we'll do Famid after you. There we go. There we go. Hold on a second. All right, so let me grab this link now, and then we'll see what that looks like. Okay, so here we go. It's called Runner Up, a tournament site. There we go. So let's take a look. What I'm going to do for me is I'm going to go through it like as if I've never seen it before, and then you guys can help me out and answer questions. Okay, so this is a tournament site, which is kind of cool. All right, so excellent. So what if I wanted to add a new tournament? This is what I should be able to do. So here's my tournament name. We'll call it, Karate Stars. There we go. The Karate Stars tournament, right? And I'll be the owner. And team 1 to 8. So this will be people. So we'll just, have random names here. So we'll say Daryl, Mark, Dan, Isabella with a Z, a Z. We'll have some other people, Mary, Nancy. I'm just making some random names, guys. Forgive me, Rui, and we'll put in Ricardo there too, just cause like that kind of thing. So there we are. And if I click add, let's see, then we have our tournament site made, right? It's called Karate Stars. That's me. And then now I should be able to view it. And then there we go. This is the team 1, and you can see Daryl versus Mark, Dan versus Isabella, Mary versus Nancy, and Rui versus Ricardo. Those are the people that are going to fight, if you will. Karate Stars, first round, right? And if I go back, if I go manage, then I should be able to get into the next round. So basically what I would do is I would pick these. This is okay for now. So let's say, for example, I said that Mark is going on. It's going to be Isabella next from that bout, Nancy, and Ricardo. There we go. And then if I click Save Changes, and if I go to View, then we can see that, so this is first round. if I go semifinals, we have this round. We don't have the runner-up yet. We don't have that round or the final. This is good. Or the winners. This is also good. But it's good that you guys have set it up right now. Cool. So let's go back to where we were before. Again, we can probably click the link there too. And let's manage it again. And let's suppose, okay, so out of these people, Mark keeps going forward. And then it's Ricardo, Mark and Ricardo. There we go. And let's just fast forward. So final, now this is interesting. So this is runner up. So this is actually what I meant. And then let's go with, I'll say Isabella and Nancy as a second and third. And then let's save changes and see what that looks like. So we'll go to view and we'll go to runner up. There we go. So that's the runner up fight. And the final is between Mark and Ricardo. And then let's go back. Manage one more time. And let's see how this works. So let's say Mark wins. So Mark is first, Ricardo second. We'll do it in order. Isabella and Nancy. Save changes and then go view. And if I look at the winners, then you should see first, second, third, fourth. Okay, so basic functionality is there. This is good. Basic functionality is there. And that's awesome. Like I think from what I'm seeing in terms of, it's not pretty, like we said, it doesn't have to be pretty. But I think the ability for you to track from one round to the other is good. That's kind of what we added. So there's no user interface right now in terms of like the brackets part. Remember, we were looking at challenge as our, kind of our prototype. We want it to look like this eventually, right? So right now it doesn't look like this, right? There's no way to, it's not a point game. So we're not keeping track of points and who's winning and stuff. There should be a way of understanding how you've gone forward. Like notice here that between these two, as an example, this guy got 3 points and this guy got 1 point, and that's why he went forward. So there should be some way of tracking that. The winners, like you can mark the winners, and that's what we've just done. We've just moved the winners into the next part, which is cool. But we don't have that yet, and that's fine. And the other thing is that we always have to start off seeing first round, second, semifinal, runner-up, and final. And I think once we're into the semifinals, then that should be the first thing that comes up. Once we go manage or view, as an example, we shouldn't be able to. First round should be there to view, but the current round is a semifinal round. So if you're going to go with something like this, where you're drawing stuff here instead of putting a table, as an example, then you probably want to hit the semifinal round first before the first round, because if it's done, if we're already here, we don't care about looking at the first round anymore. We could look back. That was past who won, but this is where we'd start. And then runner-up and final and winners should be all grayed out because we don't have that information yet, right? I shouldn't be able to look there. If we're only at semifinal, then we can't see those because those are, well, there's nothing there yet, right? So, or there should be if you're going to go there, then there should be a note that says, runner-up, final and winners haven't been decided yet, or something like that, right? Because you want to give feedback to the user saying, we're not quite there yet. Okay, but overall, in terms of the functionality looks pretty good, I think, from what I'm seeing. All right, so that's pretty good. How about some comments from everybody else? I mean, I've kind of given my comments, and let's see about editing. So edit. So I can change this and I can delete it. That's good. That means I'll delete this whole tournament, I'm guessing. So full CRUD is there. I think it's pretty good. Any questions or what are thoughts from the people that are seeing this? Not just me, but other people for this team. And Famid, if you want to talk about something I missed or whatever, you can certainly do that as well.
Yes, Professor. You pretty much covered everything. Just one thing. When you select the winners,
sorry. So when I select the winners, yes, then the active survey the active tournament goes from yes to no.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't see that right now, but okay. Oh, I see here.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. And excellent. Okay. So that means it's not active anymore. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I like it. So it's kind of the same thing. So for me, what I would do is if you've got this Boolean that basically says, is it active or not? You could kind of extend this idea. I'm just putting it out there to you. I'm not going to force you to do anything. It's up to you how you manage your back end. But maybe what you want to think about is you have a Boolean for each round. So round one, is it active or not? Round two, is it active or not? So only one round is really active at the same time, really. Except for, I have to be honest, except for the last two, which is if you look at the runner-up and final, I mean, typically what the way tournaments run are, and this is just typical, doesn't mean it's always like this, but the runner-up fight happens, or I don't know, combat or the tournament, this mini part happens before the final because it's exciting to see the final round with these two teams, right? As an example. So typically you can't see the final until the runner-up is done, and then of course the winners won't be available until the end. But here's something else: if I click winners and the final round hasn't gone, maybe we'll still see third and fourth because third and fourth has been done. It's over, right? We know who third and fourth are. So those are some options. And you can always have for each of these rounds, these are just buttons for now. For each round, you can just make, like I said, turn them off or on depending on where you are right now, right? So just thoughts for you guys, okay?
Oh, okay.
All right, but very good. Thank you for that. And I have another thing. So prof, we had some error only on deployment site on console. Can you check to see that? What is our possible problem? Okay. Well, let's see what happens here. So you guys also deployed. I'm looking at Untian right now. So Untian, you guys did this best survey site. That's nice. And okay, so let's say there's a sign in and get started, and then some stuff here. So this is where you would have in your main kind of site here. You would have a list of active surveys. Yeah.
The Ops is a React project. As you see, the database seems is not connected successfully, but in our local tools, it runs successfully. So I guess something wrong with our deployment.
Okay. All right. So let's do this. What I'll do then, if you want to show me your site locally, if you want to demonstrate, who wants to demonstrate that? And I'll give you guys access to do that. So in our, because that'll be nice to see, you know what I'm saying? It does, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, guys, but at the same time, I think it's important that we kind of take a look at other people's work. I think it's kind of a good thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys the ability to share your screen, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if someone wants to come along and kind of show us their stuff, you can certainly come up here, and if you want to share your screen, we're ready for you. There we go. Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, this is our the landing page, and you can see from the local host it is connected to the database, and if you click the text survey, you can lead it to the view page.
Okay.
And if you click the get started, it will ask you to add a survey to add, and then you can see it appears here, and you can also delete one and also. And then I click edit. It will ask you to add questions. Because the time is limited, so we only create model for the true or false question. We will add the multiple choice question and options in the second release.
Yeah.
The edit button for the edit questions is not yet completed because of the time. We will fix it in the next release. and I can delete the questions and also go back to my service. We can delete it and add and edit. So that is all what we have for now.
So if I take my survey, so if I wanted to take the survey that you just made, the test survey at the bottom there or whatever, if I take it, go back and take the survey again? The bottom one?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't matter.
This one is not, have not been fixed yet.
Okay. So you have a lot of work to do. But I mean, again, some of the stuff is there, which is good. And I think it's a good start for sure. I think thank you for that. You can stop sharing now.
Okay.
And I know that some people are having issues with when it comes to the back end. So the back end is the biggest problem that I've always seen, and the reason for this is because whenever we create a back end, we got to think about what the model looks like. So maybe that was part of it. Trying to do a React front end, which is, I think, is awesome that you're trying to do that, at the same time as trying to get your back end working. I think that may have contributed to your, maybe a little bit of a backlog of getting your features done, from what it sounds like. Remember that the front end isn't really due, not really, if you think about it, like in terms of making it pretty and making it run right, until probably the last release, right? So you could have waited, like I mentioned last week, where you could kind of just use Express just to visualize and then later on swap it out with something else. Swapping it out is not a big deal, as I'll show you today. But the good things that I see in your site are the fact that you have a list of surveys that pop up in the front. You have some of the structure, things that are missing that we saw. You only have one question type. That's a negative. You can't really respond to the survey yet. Your responses have to go somewhere. So that's something you have to fix. Like, where does the response go? It has to be saved somehow as well. And then, of course, the fact that it doesn't work online, it wasn't required. Remember I said that, I recommended it, but if you demoed it, and if you showed me that it was you were working on it and you were getting there, I'm not going to take marks off for you not being live this time. Remember, because it wasn't required. It was only recommended, right? So if you demoed it in your video, then I'm good to go. Then I'm okay, right? But the things that you're missing, the other two pieces, you're going to lose a little bit of marks on because you have to add full functionality at this point. Okay. No problem. All right. So anyone else want to show off their stuff? So there was a couple we saw, and I'll just do one more, and then we'll move on to the tech for today because we don't have a lot of time. All right. Ricardo, you have yours. All right. Let's do Ricardo's. And I'm just going to look at it, Ricardo, if you want to come on the line just to answer questions, and then I'll go through it like as if I'm looking at it for the first time, like I said. All right. So first is the survey list. Let's see what we got here. So Ricardo's obviously making or his team, Mantis, is making their own survey site, and we can see that there's a few surveys that have been made. I want to respond or answer a survey. Let's do the parents' insurance thing. Sure. All right. So, do your parents have health insurance? This is a short answer. Yes. Do your parents have life insurance? Sure. What is the insurance provider? ABC Insurance Company. Okay, and has any of your parents had an accident in the current year? No. Has the insurance company fulfilled your parents' requirements for optimal health? Yes. There we go. So there's my answer when I click submit, and that's done. Cool. So that is being able to answer a survey. You guys only have short answer. Let's see if I can make my own survey now. So that was answering a survey, and I've got the survey name. Here's the owner. So the owner can't change, but that's okay because we talked about this. It's not required.
For now, hello, Professor.
Yeah.
I'm part of Mantis developers too.
Yes.
So,
no problem.
for now, we created just the input text functionality.
Yeah.
So in the second release, we will range true and false, and maybe we will evaluate the multiple choice option.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about. So I'll make the survey. So I'm gonna say call it my survey, or I'll take favorite. How we'll call it the favorite browsers. Call that like we talked about before. And so no, the only one you're allowing is input text. You're saying so. True false doesn't work, and range doesn't work. Is what you're saying right now.
That's correct.
Okay. So only input text. So then it's like
if you If you select those, it will do input text anyway. But yeah, for now it's input text.
Okay, and so basically, it's a short answer is what it is, right? Now, how about your date range? Does that work?
Yep.
So if I go, I want to start now at today, and I want to go until tomorrow. So that works. And let's say, we'll make it like this. Do you like Chrome? And then we'll say, do you like, instead of like those other ones, do you like Firefox? Because this is not a short, it's just a short answer, right? And we'll say this is Edge and Safari. And the last one will be Opera. Okay, so submit. There we go. Favorite surveys and favorite browser. And I want to answer. Let's see, edit. First of all, can I edit? Do you like?
I have an issue with the edit part. For some reason, it's not saving the changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the questions are not, because we use different models. We use survey, question, and response. So you can modify the survey name and the dates, and it will work on top.
But this one won't work. Okay, so
yeah, we have a little issue with the questions, but edit is working with the surveys. You can test the name and the dates and all that.
Where do the responses go? So do you actually keep track?
It goes to the database. So now we have to add another page to show the answers that you put, but it goes to the database and we have it there in MongoDB.
How about delete? Delete work?
Yeah.
Let's see. Delete. Okay, no problem. So that works. All right. Oh, that's a problem. So it goes to
you were about to delete, so but press OK.
No.
Go ahead.
No. I mean, like, notice I said delete. Cancel. Yes.
Yeah, we need to adjust. Yeah, we need to adjust the cancel. We missed
routes because
the routes. Yeah.
It's pointing to.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Well, that's what I'm saying. These are kind of what I'm doing. Is I'm doing quality control, right? So I'm going through and checking. So if you didn't know that yet, then now you know it. All right. So active or inactive.
We knew that after we submitted first release.
Okay, no problem. Other things you want to put in. So so feedback for you guys. So good thing is you have your list. This is good. You can answer the survey. It looks like it's okay, and that's a good thing. I can delete, I can edit, but one thing I should be able to do is the active status. Is that something that I can, because it says 220717, that should be inactive at this point, right? Look, 15 to 17, and that means that this one should be inactive, right? So that means that status is something that's an issue. And because you have it here, you should be able to, if I go edit as a user, as an owner, I should be able to go here and turn it off. I should be able to make it inactive manually. Remember I said that? That was one of the things I want you guys to have, right? So right now, and hopefully you're taking notes, guys, so that way, you get this stuff done. So start and end dates are good, but you need to have make sure a couple things. I should not be able to do this. I shouldn't be able to do the start date today and the end date, as an example, yesterday. I shouldn't be able to do that. Let's say if I did something like, I don't know, it should be grayed out anyway. Anything before today, like these options here, should not be allowed. You shouldn't even, they either should be grayed out, as an example, and only the day from today on should be allowed. These ones should be, kind of not, or turned off or not available, if possible, right? Or if you don't do that, and if you made it so that I can just choose dates, because maybe this is tough to do, as an example, then I shouldn't be able to choose this. If I choose this and press submit, then I shouldn't be allowed that, like that functionality. And it doesn't seem that to have changed anything anyway. I think that's an issue with your edit again. Yeah, it's an issue.
You can, sorry, what?
So when I edit it, when I edit it, if I change the dates, so if I went to the start date, let's say is today, but the end date was yesterday or the day before, and press submit. Okay, it did work. Okay.
That part is working.
Yeah, okay, good. Oh, I did it here, that's why. All right. So this shouldn't be allowed. So this kind of thing where it's before that should, so things like this, like things like kind of quality control like this. Go through it, make sure that this isn't allowed. Validation for use for the user is important. And then when it comes to answering your survey, This is okay. This format is okay. Maybe, submit your answers is fine. I think this is pretty good. The survey name, maybe you want to make that a little bit more bold, just from when you get to making it pretty one day, like at the end, kind of stuff. Think about how you're going to present this. But for now, functionality is fine when it comes to what it looks like. And then now you're recommending a range, and I think you're looking at like a Likert scale, as I'm guessing. That's what the range is, like 1 for.
Yeah, like you can move something like that, like a range.
So again, if you guys are going to do that, so typically it's called a Likert scale, like I said, right? So a Likert scale might look something like this, where you have, very satisfied, unsatisfied, neutral, satisfied, whatever, that kind of stuff, right? So a Likert scale goes from strongly disagree to agree. That's typically how it's done. Okay, like something like this. You could have a slider if you really wanted it, or you could have a radio button. Yeah, a Likert scale is what normally it is. Likert scale. All right, and Likert scale is like that's the range from strongly disagree to agree. That's kind of the standard way. And the reason why people use this standard is the good thing about this is because it's tracked in the same way. Some people use more than 5 because the problem with 5 is people will choose neutral a lot, right? When it comes to the scale, it's easy for me. If I don't know, I'm going to choose neutral. Here, if it's something like this, you got to choose either positive or negative, and that's what people really want is positive or negative. If you offer a neutral choice, in many ways that's negative, all right, because it's not agreed, right? So it's like 3 negative and then 2 positive. So that's normally how it works. And even when you do your survey for Centennial, typically you have kind of more choices, right? So it's like 7 choices instead of normally something like that, something more than this, right? Strongly disagree. So that's the the Likert scale that you can put there instead of range, and it's not that difficult because really what you're thinking about is it's just a set of radio buttons like this. Okay, that's all you need to put in there for the Likert scale. The only thing with the Likert scale is, and there's 2 ways you can do this. You can make it so that it's standard, so that you can't modify the options. It's like either strongly disagree and it's preset for you, right? But the question, so that's kind of an easy one to do because if you do a Likert scale, all you need to do is the question text, whatever that is. So the question might be something like, how much do you like Chrome? That might be the question text, but the range will be already preset for you. Nothing for you to modify, right? Because it's already done. Unless you want to give them a chance to do something like, 5 and 7 or whatever. Like, so you kind of give them options to say, well, it's either this one or this one. Like, so example, what I meant is, maybe a range that there's only, instead of 5 options where it's like strongly disagree, and neutral, maybe there's another option too. I mean, if you really want to, but a range, which is a Likert scale, is okay. Right, that's something that's kind of built in. True false is easy too because again, it's all you're doing is pressing a radio button. True false, right? Like it's a radio button, right? Those are easy. I don't recommend short answer. I don't recommend it. It can be done. You did it, but the problem with short answer is you can't report on it. It's only qualitative. So when it comes to your reporting, how are you going to report that? Right? Because it's a qualitative answer, right? So you can't really collect it into a report very easily. It's more difficult. That's all I'm saying, right? So I'm glad you have something right now, but I recommend something that's more quantitative for your survey when it comes to reporting. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, I think you got the survey creation page, which is what you needed. You've got the ability for you to edit your questions, delete. Editing doesn't quite work well, so you'll lose some marks there. And the fact that you don't have multiple questions, you only have 1, like instead of 2, you'll lose a little bit of marks there. But for the most part, I think you've got things pretty much going. I know you guys are. It's already responsive because it's Bootstrap. That's what it looks like to me. And I'm not looking at it. And I mean, the colors are okay. But again, I don't care about any of that stuff because you don't have to make it pretty. So I think for the most part, it's a good start. It's a really good start, Elias. All right, so.
Thank you, thank you. Well, that's good. Oh, I remember that you said that like this first release is like basic CRUD, right?
Yeah. So it's, I mean, again, it's, I think what you guys have here is a good start. Like I said, there's stuff that's missing, but just like the previous teams that we've seen so far, I think there's opportunities for you guys to make it better as you go forward, right? So it's pretty good. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so sorry. So I think for the most part, you guys have done what I've asked. I'm going to move on. I know there's other people. If we have time later on, if you guys want me to look at other stuff too and give you feedback, but these are some good examples of some student work that we've got. I think I've seen a couple of different kinds right now. It's a couple of different survey types and everything else, but I think it's pretty good. All right. So any questions before we move on? Comments for you guys. How did you find it? One thing that I have to ask you guys is feedback. How did you find the first release? Was it hard? How was your teams? How does that work? Elias, I see you're coming on.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning was easy, but for example, I think we went with the approach of having multiple models.
Yeah.
So it's not that easy that way.
No, it's not.
We use
Yeah.
one. So, for example, for the edits, we have in the same page we are modifying one survey, and with the idea of the survey we go to the questions, and we have to modify the two models. So the first model was working great, and when we were meeting live, like trying to fix it, and last time we just realized, okay, it's editing survey, but something is missing with the question. So
Okay.
we kind of maybe we will need your help in a quick question for that, but we were trying to use with monks the find one rotate and taking the survey ID from the survey and using it in the question, but it was not working. So in my opinion, we took the approach of the three models. Maybe it's a little bit harder than using just one. Just one is easy peasy.
It is easy. The only problem with it is the biggest problem with the survey creation thing is the way you're constructing the survey at the end is custom, right? So that means that whatever the question is that you're adding in, those questions, when you edit it, have to be linked somehow, whether it's kind of combined, like one big model, or whether it's separate model classes. It has to be kind of linked to the survey. So there has to be a question ID, a survey ID, a response ID, option text ID. Those are all, how you do it is up to you, right? So if I was going to think about it from a JSON perspective, and what I would do is I always think about the data first. Okay, so this is a help for everybody here. So if I was going to pull up let's just use Visual Studio Code for a second. Okay, so and Visual Studio Code just to give us an editor to work with. Okay, so let's suppose under the data, what I would always do is start thinking about what your data is going to look like. So this is kind of a sample survey. Okay, so I'll make it here. I'll say sample survey. There we go. And I'm just using your previous thing for this. I'm not actually starting the lesson yet with this kind of stuff. I'm just talking about it with you. So here's sample survey. So think about it. So you want some kind of, the survey itself. So what does it look like? And is it an array, right? So if your survey itself is going to be, you're going to have some properties. So one of them is the ID. So survey ID, right, would be the first thing. And let's give it an ID for now. We'll give it an ID of 1. Yeah, there we go. So that's good. And then you're also going to need some kind of survey name, right? So survey name, and let's give it, my survey. Okay. There we go. All right. And then you're probably going to have the start date, and that would be of type date time, right? So here you may want to actually put in the date of what that is, And a datetime object would not be usually in quotations, but let's suppose it is. For now, we'll make it all strings. So here, let's suppose the start date was in 2202, dash 07, if I can type 18, let's say, and then probably some kind of time, like time is important, so 920, right? And let's suppose this is your start date, and then you have your end date. So that's what I would do, Elias. I would start thinking about what your model, what your data should look like. What should it look like, right? I'm not sure if you guys did that, right? So that's the first thing. And then once you start thinking about this as if this is what you're looking at, active, right? And then once you start looking at this thing, now think about the questions. So questions could be an array, right? So questions, your questions array, okay? And if that's true, here's your array. What do the questions look like? So your question would be an array of objects, and your questions object should have, inside would be another little object, if you will, something like your question ID, right? Which would be question 1. We'll make it a variable again, and we can kind of put this into this. So this is what I would do. I would start off, and this is for everybody here. Maybe you guys didn't think of it, or maybe you did it in a different way, or different, kind of a priority or whatever. It's okay. So this is your question text, right? Which would be.
But in that approach, you are using one big model.
No.
Because you have survey and questions there. So I was thinking maybe you have survey and question ID, and that links to another model.
Yeah, one sec. So first we go one step at a time, right? So what I would do is, so this is this, and then you would have, the type, question type, as an example. And it could be in a different order. Maybe what you'd want to do is probably put your question type first, because that would dictate the type of, so here you would probably have in, I don't know, we'll call it multiple choice. Okay. I'm just saying here, let's think about this for a second. So here's your question text. And then if it's multiple, then the thing is, options would be another thing. So you have an array of options. So options, right? So this is how it could look. And then inside the options, right? Then you have your option ID, right? And I know this is academic, but I'm doing this with you just to go through the exercise. Okay, so please forgive me. I'm not trying to, I'm sure you guys have this idea already because I talked about it, but let's think about this. So this is the option text. So Chrome, right? And you probably want the option value in here, 1, right? So something like that. Okay, so that is your options. And now that I have a basic structure for the questions and the options, right, now I can duplicate that. So let's do a comma and let's put in some more options in there. So Chrome, this would be option ID is 2, value is 2. We'll say edge, and I don't know, we'll do 3. Just I'm not going to take too much time here, all right? Because otherwise we're going to spend time doing this and not anything else. 3, we'll make this, so this is Firefox. Okay, and this will be 3. Okay, so that is your question. The other thing that's missing here is if I was going to go and do the multiple model thing, just for a second, before we move on, then your option ID should also have a question ID that's linked to it. So here, somewhere at the bottom, it could be at the bottom part of this, you would have a question ID. Okay, and a question ID would be 1, right? And that would be the same for all of them. Right? So we want to kind of add that one in because you want to make a relationship between one and the other in this particular scenario, right? If you're going to try and make it separate, like we said, right? So there we go. All right, so question ID would be the thing to have here. You could take it further and even go with the survey ID. You can put that in there. So your question ID would also have that. So whether you put it here or at the bottom of the options for the question type, for this particular question, you could have, at the end of this, you could have a, survey ID here, which is 1, as an example. Okay, so survey ID. So this is for the question. So this is your question 1, and then we can make another question underneath it. And you can see that this is all embedded. This is the embedded style, like you're talking about, Elias, right? So how do I remove this then and make it so that each of the questions has a separate model? How do I do that? What would you do? How would you? So if this is your output for your embedded model, this is your embedded model, and if again, I can have an array, another question. Let's just add one more question in there, just to copy paste, okay? And I'm so sorry. I just want to make sure that you see it, right? So there's your question 2. This time it will be, instead of multiple, it'll be true, false, right? And, do you like, I don't know, we'll say something like, do you like pasta? Sure. Whatever, right? And then instead of, now this is a different kind of options. You wouldn't have all these options, right? So because your option is one or the other, then really your option ID could be used. This would be option ID 1, option ID 2, and this would be true, and this would be false. And question ID is 2, right? I'm just, giving you an example of true, false. This is, so your option ID would be reused. Notice that the class for options is exactly the same as for multiple choice. The only difference is that the option text becomes true and false if you're doing a true false type question. Okay, that's the only thing that's going to come up that's different. Survey ID is going to be 1, question ID is going to be 2, right? So that's kind of the embedded method for all the questions. So you have a questions array, and inside there you have this. Okay, now what about the responses? Let's think about the responses for a second. So you could have, let's take it further, right? For the embedded version, you could have a responses array right here. So you can have something called responses, right? Which is an array. Okay, so how would the responses look? And Elias, now help me out here since you're with me. What would the responses look like? What would the structure of your responses if I had this kind of survey?
Well, you will have question ID to
Okay.
link the responses with the questions.
So first of all, actually, you would probably have a survey ID, right?
Yeah, exactly. The survey ID.
So survey ID would be 1, right? So that would be the first thing. And notice that right away I have an issue because survey ID being 1 inside of curly braces doesn't work. I need to have curly braces within that, right? So that has to be like this. So I have an array of responses with the survey ID 1 being the first response, right? Okay, and then so now what would it look like in terms of the next piece? So survey ID is 1, and then I would have question, right?
Yeah, question ID.
So question ID, 1 as an example. There's question ID 1. Could I have that? Or maybe what you'd have is an array of questions. So questions. Again, because now the problem is, if you don't do this, then how are you going to classify your responses, right? So I'm embedding everything. Like that's what I'm saying, right? So if I had a question and your first question was going to be, so question ID 1, right? Question ID 1, and let's just put the response in one line, and then you probably have a response, right? Or choice, so whatever you want to call it, and then maybe that would be something like, I don't know. In the first one, let's say I like Chrome, so Chrome is 1, right? So let's say I put in here 1, and then response 1 and I could put in value because the response and the value might be totally different, right? So maybe the value, and instead of response 1, maybe response ID is what I would have, or option ID is what I would have here. Option ID 1, right? Because that's the option that was selected, and then the value that would be here. So value, which is whatever we chose, which is in this case 1. Okay, so that is the first response. And basically the reason why it's like this is because, so for the survey ID 1, right, as an example, then you have question ID 1. The option ID was chosen was 1. That was the one that was chosen. And you could say option chosen if you really want to instead of option ID. But I think option ID might be the same, the simple way of doing it. And then we have 2 questions. Let's do the second one too. And question ID 2, let's suppose, do you like pasta? And I put no. Okay, so let's say I don't like pasta. I don't know. So question ID would be 2, value would be 2, as an example. Okay, and that could be a way of doing it. Things that are missing from this, okay, are the owner. Who is the owner for this thing? So survey ID, survey name, start date, end date, active. You could also put in the owner right here. So owner. And the owner could be a name, but it could also have an ID as well. You could say have an owner ID, right? Which is, I don't know, 1, right? Where the owner ID is connected to an owner, right? Where the owner is like the user, right? So instead of having like username here, you could have a username here as well, right? It's up to you. But so that's what's missing. But that's kind of how you can embed everything as you go. And then when you do your responses, this is the easy way. You can go and do your responses and doing it this way. Okay, so you can add more responses to the you know, to your database. So your collection would be the survey collection. This is only one survey, right? There's only one survey, so you can have a second survey, right? That would be here, down here, and that means that up here, if you think about this, this would be stored in the database. Again, taking it one step further for a second, right? This would be surveys, right? And that would be another array of surveys. And I would just take all of this, and this would be your first survey in surveys. All right, so this is the survey 1, right? Survey ID, and then maybe we'd have another survey in there. Okay, but for now, just to end it off, it looked like this. Does this make sense to you? And did you think about it in another way? This is for everybody here, not just for Elias. Did you think about it in another way other than this? Because this is kind of the way I think about it when I'm thinking about it combined. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
For example, I think, in my opinion, the beauty of MongoDB is that you're not attached to a schema and a format. So this is like the way of doing it, right? But why some person will choose like have 3 different models? Like, why divide it if you can if you have the flexibility with MongoDB that do it just like this, like you showed us, embedded with all the properties and different arrays? Why would I choose to do it like in 3 or 4 different models?
Well, there's different ways of thinking about this, right? So this is a way of thinking
what's
about.
the benefit of not having it like doing the other? What's the benefit of using other approach different than what you showed us right now?
Well, the benefit is you can have a questions collection, so and an options collection, right? So all your options and all your questions are in different parts, components, right? So for example, in the survey ID, the way you would do it is you'd say, okay, I made my survey, right? And the only thing that would be in the survey would be, I'm just going to separate this now for you to see it. So that is your surveys, but you could have, I'm just going to look at the top part here as one option, and let's save this, and I'm going to see if I can give you this as an example. Okay, I'm just going to give it to you because I want you guys to have an example of, because people were confused about, could I do it this way? Yes, you could. I just showed you one. Remember, I said a possible way is what I said. I proposal as opposed to making it in one. And the reason why I wanted you to have that option, here's your sample survey. There we go. Okay, that's your sample survey JSON. I gave you guys that just to show you what this would look like. But the other way is, and let's just make the copy paste. And let's make this, and we'll call this F2. We'll call this surveys.json. So surveys would be only the survey. So sample survey is like everything, kind of an embedded method. And there's nothing wrong with doing it this way. Nothing wrong with it. The difference here is that when you start off, your responses array are going to be empty. You're not going to have anything in here. So there's nothing in your responses. Your responses would start off as empty, and then you'd add to your responses array as you go. In here, you'd modify the original option, you update the original option over and over again. Okay, that's what you're going to keep doing. And when you create your model for the first time, your questions won't change typically, and all that kind of stuff as well. But the other way to do it is, what if I had a surveys, and the survey itself had just this part? So your questions, there was no questions array. Okay, you don't have a questions array like this. So we're going to get rid of this part. And let's make sure that that is not the one I'm deleting, just your questions array. The yellow one. There we go. Okay, good. So no questions. You don't have questions. You just have a survey. And now I want you to think of it this way now. So now your surveys, you have, is it active or not? You have a survey ID and stuff. And then let's make another survey. So you have a survey and then another one. Okay, so I want you to show you this one instead. So there's your, oh, that'd be okay. I meant to do it like this. So let's say this is the first one and this is the second one. And JSON's great because it does that for you. So this is the thing, let's say the same owner ID. So they made another survey. We'll call it my second survey, right? And it started tomorrow and it ends the next day, right? As an example. And it's true. So you have a couple of surveys here. So that's the surveys collection, but there's no questions attached whatsoever. It just keeps track of the survey. Is it active or not? And that's all it does. Just bear with me. Okay, so now let's make another one. Let's make a brand new one. So copy paste. And let's call it the questions collection. This is what I was talking about before with the, as an alternative to what we did before. So questions. Okay, and let's just grab the questions that we already have here. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Let's just grab these questions that I have. And we'll go to here. And we'll go to questions and we'll get rid of all this. And we'll put in the questions. There we go, questions. So there's the questions array, which is the questions collection, right? And this is question ID and so on. And one thing you need is, there's your survey ID. Notice how when I copy pasted, it actually rearranged the stuff in order. Actually, look at that. I didn't do that on purpose because look at my simple survey. My sample survey had. Did I do that properly? Maybe I did it by accident. Oh no, I did that. All right. So yeah. So here's your survey ID 1, and let's suppose this comes from survey ID 2. All right. So and this is question 1 this time, right? Okay. So question 1. You know, as an example, right? But there's no options. There's no options. So the options are gone, right? But you have your this part. Okay, so there's your questions. What is your favorite browser? So the actual question text is what's there. And the same thing goes with here. There's no options because that would be your you know, so the survey ID 1, survey ID 2, you only have one question for each survey, and that's your questions, okay? And one more time, and let's make a copy paste, and let's call this options. Options.json. So options, just similar to this one, we're going to take the options here, right? And we're going to go and put this into, this is where it gets interesting. And I put the options here inside of this. Here's my options, but we're also going to add in the options for the other one. all right? Because there's options for option ID. Now, we don't have survey ID here, and that's something that we're missing because the option should have the survey that they belong to. Let's just put it like this so we can see it. So question ID is 1, but really, do we need a survey ID? Because the question ID is 1, the question ID is 1, the question ID is 1. So really, these options belong to a question that's already in the questions thing here. This is they belong to this question right here, right? So whereas the this one, and let's just grab just these pieces because that's all we need. And we're going to go into the options and put those pieces in, and like this. Okay. So now tell me the difference. Elias, you're up. Since we're talking about this, we're planning it, and I want you to think about the
Yeah, it's like having modularity, like different components. It's divided. It's like easier to track or modify.
That's the reason. And the thing is, but the challenge is the setup is hard.
Yeah,
so you pay up.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
The challenge is not like how to save the data or organize. The
Yeah.
challenge is in the programming side, like how to link this ID to. It's like kind of a relational database. So I'm like, it's that worth it, like to do it divided.
I agree with you. I think there's some questions that are going to be coming up where if I'm going to do a relational database, I might as well use MySQL, as an example, or I might as well use, SQL Server or something else.
Like, in my opinion, this model looks like using relational databases.
In many ways, it is. But the thing is, remember, the flexibility that we have with MongoDB also applies here, right? Where I can sit there and say, okay, so I have my survey, and if my survey one thing that we could put in here, okay, to help with this is come back to we'd go back one level to help. All right, how would I help this? How would I program this? So if I go back one to questions, so questions are here, and then I would say, well, how many questions do I have? Maybe a question number. Let's just say, all right, and let's say my question number is 1. So I have 1 question, right? And maybe my question number will keep track of, we'll call it question count, actually, is probably what I would probably call this question count. So question count is 1, all right? What about if this one had question count as 2, as an example? So you can see, you can keep track of how many questions are on each of this is option count, option counts. Option count, we had, I don't know, 4 or 5. How many options do we have? 3. All right, so 3. So option count would be 3. It's an actual number, and where this one is option count would be 1. Option count would be 2 because it's true false, right? So option count 3, option count 2, and similarly in the survey, you could have question count. So this is something that can help. Question count is, let's suppose there was 2, right? There's only 1. But let's suppose it was 2, and let's suppose this one had question counts. Let's suppose this one was 5, right? So these numbers could help you loop through for however many questions you have. You would search through the questions collection and then compare. You want to filter the question ID with you want to go through it twice as an example. Right? You could do it that way. Or you could collect all the ones instead of even having the need for a question count. You don't even need that. I mean, you could just keep that as a statistic more than anything else. But you would just loop through, for every question that matches the survey ID, you would loop through and collect your surveys that way. That's what you do. So that's why you collect that information from the questions collection. All right. So you could do that. The good thing about doing it, I'm putting it out there, positives and negatives about this system, if you're splitting it up like this. And by the way, the one thing that's missing is the response.json, which is where your responses would go. The good thing about doing this is that you have structure. Everything is structured the exact same way. Okay, so the schema is identical. Like it's very simple to put together. And your collections, you can look at each of your collections separately and take a look at the questions. Another good reason for using this is if I ever want to keep favorites, let's suppose in my questions, I have is it favorite or not? Right? So true, like a true false. Yeah, I will, absolutely. I'll give it to you. So if it's favored or not, and if it's a favorite question, this is something that you can do too, right? If it's a favorite question, then if someone wants to build another survey, the user, and they want to use the same question again, they don't have to redo it. It's favorited. So that means that it would be something that you can reuse, something like that in the future. That's an option. Favorite, true or false. Maybe this was false, right? So this is like, I don't want to use this one, but this one is true. So I don't care about keeping this one or whatever, but I can have my favorite questions. So when I'm building a survey, I can build it faster, right? Kind of thing. So I can kind of I can reuse that favorite question in the next survey I build, as an example. I couldn't do this as easily, as an example, if I was, if I had a whole survey that I had built. Okay, that's a totally different thing of doing it, right? And it's the same thing with the options text. So the options text, I mean, to make this favorited, I don't think so, but because the survey is favorited or the question is favorited, the options would be favorited automatically. That's something you probably can do. So that's that one. And the last thing is, and just not put this together, I know we're not talking about React yet, but I want to help you guys with your project, and that's what I'm doing this for, right? The other one is, and let's just save all. What about if I had, so a new file, let's make a new file, and we'll call this the response, kind of responses .json. That's the last one. And again, all you do is you take the responses part, this part, and in your responses kind of collection, then it would look like this, right? So your survey ID is 1, and let's say your, now here's something, this would be the questions. This is the questions that you're hitting, right? So maybe again, your response model would have a survey ID as well as, the questions that were kind of like that you have in here. Again, lots of ways to do this. You could also call this answers if you don't like questions, just so that you don't duplicate the same structure as before. Just in case that's an issue, you can call it something else, and that's not a big issue here. So so this is the thing that you could do, and let me just copy paste this so you can see it. Then I'll give you guys all this stuff online. 1 second. So here's survey ID 1 and survey ID 2. And let's suppose this one wasn't here, but rather it was here. This was something that it could look like. So why is this good again? Well, this will be question ID 1 in this case, right? The reason why this is a good way of doing it as well is because, again, you have all of your responses in one place, right? So, it's just a way of keeping track of, kind of everything in one kind of collection. There's some value doing it this way too, because this is all the data. All your data is in one spot, right? All your response data is collected. So if I ever want to go through and, put together some kind of analysis on all the data that's been collected, it's easier to do it this way. I don't have to go through each of the surveys. I can literally look at your response collection and go through it and filter by survey ID, filter by question ID, and come up with a bunch of responses all at once. So this is kind of another way of thinking about things. So this is the other way. So let me give you all these. And again, I'm just going to show you this. So I gave you sample survey, and I'll give you the surveys, the responses, the questions, and the options so that you have all those. Okay. Questions, comments about this? Elias was very clear on it, and I think I agree with him. It's more the old way you understood. And the reason why I did it this way is because you know about, kind of relational databases.
Do we get some extra point for using different models?
No. It's whatever makes sense for you. So if you wanted to go back to the single model, Elias, you still got time. Because remember, you just did your prototype. Your prototype was just, I want to get things going. You did it already with your team. I'm perfectly happy with that. And I think you're going to have success doing it this way or the other way. If you wanted to just go back to the simple survey format, which is this way, that's fine too. I'm okay with it. All right? Whatever makes sense for you guys, whatever is easier for you to do, as long as the functionality is there. It doesn't matter. That's what I said in the beginning. Those are the two ways to do it that I can think of that is easier. And there's other ways too. Some people split things off in a different way. Some people say, okay, I want the survey to be separate, but the questions and the options to be one. I've seen that too. So the separations are survey is different, questions and options are a different one, and the responses are different. Okay, responses are a whole different collection. Okay, and I've also seen, here's another way I've seen it. I've seen it where the surveys are one, with the questions and the options. So questions, survey, and options are all one. That's the creation, and the responses, only the responses are separate. I've seen that too. Okay, so it's really up to you and what speaks to you and how you're going to manage it from a code perspective. However you want to do it is fine with me. And the reason why is because every one of these methods has its pros and cons. Every one of them. Okay. Okay, that's it for me for this one. Any other questions before we need to move on to start with React a little bit today? Anybody? We did 3. Okay, no problem. And you know what, Elias? If you and your team get back together today and say, awesome. And if you guys get together and say, you know what, I'm not really happy with the structure. I want to go with one. If you guys decide to do that, like one big structure, and Ricardo's on your team too, right, Elias? Isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Ricardo, so if you guys get together and you guys all decide that, you know what, we're all going to do just one big one, that's fine. I'm okay with it. Ricardo, what are your thoughts on it? I've kind of asked Elias a lot, but what are your thoughts? What would you want to do?
Oh no, I'm texting and you know, hold on.
Okay, no problem. Again, you're thinking doing one, like one big one? Okay, no problem. Okay, yeah. So that thank you for that. That's good feedback. All right, so that's again, and I'm showing this to you because, and this is learnings, and I want to talk about the learnings with everybody because data first. Once I have what my data is going to look like, then I have my model. When I have my model, then I can make my controller. And once I have my controller, then I understand how my routes are going to play out, right? Because once I have my data, if I go from a back to front, data first, and I know how this is going to be looking like, once I have this, then I have everything else. For me, that's how I program. I program from the back forward, right? Some people program the other way around. Some people like to do the model first, as an example, and then they do the views, and then they do the data. I don't agree with that. I like doing the data first. I'm a data first person, right? And it really depends on your philosophy and how your brain works. Like, the reason why I do the data first is because this is my dependency. It's going to be if I want my data to be presented this way, now I know how my model is going to be, right? So that's just me. That's how I think about it. All right, so this is good. It's nice, but really this is not what we're talking about. I'm just going to put this up on GitHub so you guys have this from last week. It's going to be part of last week's project because I didn't really make it any difference. So I'm just going to say clear git at dot git commit -m. We'll say added data model proposals git push. So you guys have that up online too, up on the last project for last week. But what are we going to do for this week? Because this week we're talking about, I'm just going to move on now. So we're talking about the next phase, which is getting the front end going. Okay, so again, a couple of options. I want to mention it again. You do not have to go with a separate front end. You can stay with Express the entire time. You don't have to do it. Right now, though, we've worked on a back-end API last week. Let's see if we can work on our front end this week, okay? So to do the front end, we're not going to start by copy-pasting. That's not going to work like that anymore, all right? What we need to do instead, and I'm just going to kind of minimize this stuff, is go over to our friend React and talk about, in the getting started part, what to do, all right? So getting started, there's a couple things.
Professor,
yeah?
Quick question. Last class you used local DB, but I'm guessing it's the same if we use the Atlas, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely the same. No difference. The only difference with Atlas is going to be how you connect your front to your back. And we'll talk about that as a potential problem, okay? So, and the reason for this is because front to back connections, the problem with that whole thing is they don't like being on the same server. There's usually this cross-origin resource sharing problem, which we took care of on the back end, but still can present a problem on the front end. So, but yeah, you can totally put it on Heroku and on MongoDB Atlas, no difference. There's no difference here. I just didn't demonstrate it last week because of time. Okay, let's go back. So if I go to getting started under docs, you can see that it says, how do I install stuff? Installation, getting status. And then if you go here, it says try React. And then this one is what we want. Create a new React app, this one. Okay, so it says learn how. And notice when we go to learn how, it says we want to use this syntax, Mpx, create React app, my app. Okay? Okay, so that's what we want to do. And my app, if we're going to do that, we're going to use create React app is the name of the option of the package. Mpx, instead of using npm or yarn, Mpx is it automatically activates or executes. That's what it is. Module execution online, as opposed to it downloading anything for you. It doesn't download anything. Okay, so it doesn't download the module. It keeps it online. So why Mpx and not npm? Because Mpx, the great thing about this is, like it says, it's a package runner, right? And a package runner, it gives you the latest version of this starting off, which is huge, right? Because React is evolving. Like right now, you can see it's at 18.2.0, right? As it continues to evolve, you want the latest package. Then you use Mpx. If you want a certain package, you can also download the tool for yourself, the Create React App, and you can look at it on the npm registry. So if I go npm registry, right, and if I go to Create React App, I'm just going to go there for you guys so you can see it. Create React, right? So here's Create React App. Take a look at that. That's Create React App, right? And if you look there, there's Create React App. Could I download this? Yes. Look, I could say npm install Create React App. And if I did that, it's going to give you version 5.0, right? But take a look what it said here in the, here it says 5.2. Why? Because what they've done with Create React App is they update this when it's stable, right? And it really depends on your philosophy about stuff, right? Some people would like to, it says the package includes the global command for Create React App. And if I click there, it's going to go right back to the GitHub repository for Create React App. And notice, even here on the GitHub repository, they say, don't do that, use Npx. Guys, you can certainly do this. So it says, if you've previously installed, it says, Create React App globally via npm, we recommend you uninstall the package using npm uninstall or yarn, and to ensure that Mpx always uses the latest version. So this is the first piece to understand, which is a different way of doing things than what we've done so far. Number one. Okay, great. Let's do it. So the next part is, here is our kind of our folder, and I'm just going to pull up another separate command prompt. Okay, separate. And I'm just going to get into that folder. So cd space, and I want to go into this folder here, which is this one. Okay. And if I do a dir, you can see that that is what we have. And here I'm going to do that Mpx, right? Create React App, just like it says here. And the name of my app, which is going to be front end. Okay, seriously. So Mpx, let's do it together. Create React App. And the name of my app, which is going to be front end. Okay, that's the name of my app for now. And what it's going to do, it's going to go out to the internet, and if everything goes well, it says that everything will work. Now look what it says. You cannot create a project name front end because of npm naming restrictions. Name can no longer contain capital letters. Awesome, no problem. Let's do it again. Mpx, create React App, and we're just going to use front end. We can modify it later, guys. Don't worry. Hey, and now it's going to work. Green. And I like the way it did this. So what it did was it said, hey, this is red, error. This is not what we want. We want to do it this way. Awesome. And it's doing its installation. React Native is very different, but yes, you'll get the idea behind it. It's React and React Native are different implementations. They have different things, but definitely, yeah, once you've used React, then React Native is easy to learn. Okay, cool. Awesome. So now we're almost done. And let's keep going. All right, good. So now it says CD front end and then npm start. It also says, okay, so here's some stuff that it gives you, some information. It says success, created front end at blah, 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 right? Inside the directory, you can run several commands, npm start, npm run build, npm test, right? So, okay, npm run build bundles the app into static files for production. So this is what we'd want to do if we're going to put it up at the end, like week 14, you know, as an example. npm test starts a test runner. We're not going to be doing tests in this course. npm run eject removes this tool and copies build dependencies. And if you do this, you can't go back. We never want to do this. Okay, I'll tell you right now. And npm start starts a server, which is pretty cool. All right, that's what it does. All right, so that's what we did. So let's do a directory. You can see still we have our front end and back end. And it doesn't matter because we can rename this now. So now if we go back to here, you can see we have front end. We can rename this to whatever we want. It's not going to affect anything, by the way, guys, because we're not into front end in any way. Oh, one thing to note. Sorry. Let's talk about this for a second. See how I didn't rename? So we would have to rename it like this, my front end. And because it's Windows, we'd have to rename it back to from my front end, because capitals don't make any difference in Windows. You'd have to change it like this, and then now it'll take. Notice what I had to do? I had to change like my front end and then go to front end. Yay! All right, tricks. So now let's go back and work with my front end here in Visual Studio Code. Awesome. So what do I get with Visual Studio Code and my front end? A couple things to note. npm modules, all the node modules have been installed. As an example, there are 18 things that we've downloaded. It says 18 updates. These are all the changes that we made, right, to those. So let's go back to this. There's node modules. Node modules, you can see I have all of these. So that's what's been added. Let's go through the project. Public. Yeah. Sorry, Bhupinder, you came on mute. You came off of mute. Okay, I'll put you on mute. So public has a favicon that comes with it. It also comes with an index.html. Here's your index.html. I'm showing you this because, guys, this is where you're going to have to modify stuff. So index.html, your logo comes with a couple logos, right? Here it is. A manifest for your logo, as an example. The name of the short name that you're going to put in there, as well as a robots.txt for crawlers. Okay, so that's what it comes with. Your src file, it simply comes with a couple of ways to start off with. Your project will always start with your app.js. This is the way it would start. And now notice that these are JS and not TS. That's not what we want, right? We want TS. We want TSX, not JS. And we would have to convert this. Instead of me doing it manually, I wanted to show you this first, but instead of having me to do this manually, which I do not want to do, I don't want to do this manually, I want to do this with TypeScript. Let's take a look and see what we can do with the TypeScript. How do I add TypeScript to my project? So first, let's delete this one. So let's close this off. So close the folder, please. And the reason why we want to close it is we won't be able to delete it unless it's closed. So here's our front end, and let's just redo that again one more time. So delete. Okay, so front end gave us a couple things. No problem, Bhupinder. And that was good, but we want to add in a TypeScript support for this as well. So by default, we followed the first thing, and it said React app, my app, but there are some additional options that we have. All right, so notice it says we could always use this if we wanted to. If we wanted to download it, we could, and we can totally start going there. What's included? All right, so look, it says React, JSX, ESX, TypeScript, and Flow syntax. is all included for this stuff. And there's credit for everyone that's been added in. But what about if I wanted just to add in a TypeScript option? How do I add that in? So if I said, create React app TypeScript, okay, as an example, just to put it up there, how do I add TypeScript to create React app? It's going to tell you. It's going to say Mpx create React app, my app, -- template TypeScript. And by the way, see where it took me to create React app -dev docs. This is an amazing tool set. I'm just going to put this up here. Let's go back to this. My create React app site is different than at React. Okay, that's one thing to notice too. So create React app, separate site than React. This is the one. Okay. And so that's one thing. And if I go to docs here, you can still see that there's a different structure than what we had before. Okay. On the right, you can see it tells you about Mpx, Npm, yarn, and so on, and how to select the template for doing this. There's also describes the folder structure that you're given and available other stuff as well. Under development, it talks about the editor setup and everything else, styles, and a bunch of other stuff. Okay, so and how to build your app and so on. Really great work, these guys, and they're constantly updating stuff, which is to me one of the strengths of this whole thing. If I go to select a template, selecting a template is what we want to do. We're trying to say that my template that I want to select is TypeScript, which is a very common way of doing things. Okay, you can also select a package manager, which is kind of neat, which is you can choose to Mpx create React app, or I can use yarn. Right? I'm going to use Mpx because it doesn't matter to me. Okay, so this is what I want. Mpx, create React app, the name of my app, -- template, and then TypeScript. And that would be the way I want to go. Let's try that now. So going back to this, let's do it again. So I'm going to say up here, Mpx, create React app, front end, right, -- template, and then TypeScript, just like we said before. So if you look back here, it's just template space TypeScript, all lowercase. And then press enter. And if everything goes well, we should have our front end again, but this time with all the TypeScript requirements built in. Guys, don't try and do this on your own. Don't start on JavaScript and then try and update it to TypeScript. It's not going to work, okay? It's not even recommended, okay? Because if you go with TypeScript second, then it's going to be a huge problem. However, what if you're not comfortable with TypeScript and you wanted to use a JavaScript front end with React? It's totally fine. To me, it doesn't matter, okay? I use TypeScript because it speaks to me. It gives me more code hinting. It helps me code better, all right? But for you, if TypeScript is an issue because you have understanding problems, or it's just another layer of abstraction for you, or something to make it difficult, that's a problem, all right? Okay, it also gave you a bit of some stuff. It says, we detected TypeScript in your project, right? And created a tsconfig.json for you. Your tsconfig.json has been populated with the default values. Removing template package using npm. It says 6 high severity vulnerabilities, right? And you can fix the issue. We're not going to at this point. But let's go back into our project. Here it is. And rename it. So before we get out, I'm going to just rename it like my front end. So it renames, and then just call it back to front end, just so we know what it is. So front end, there we are. And now I'm just going to pull that into Visual Studio Code, and let's see the difference. So remember before we had our public, and inside there we had the same stuff, so nothing different there. But inside of our SRC folder now, it's all TSX stuff, and this is where I prefer that we start. Okay. So here, if you notice, app.tsx is a TypeScript type of app. And notice also that by default, the app.tsx, which is the starting point, starts off with a function. Okay. First thing we want to do is there's no nodemon. Okay, one thing to note, no nodemon in this thing. What we have instead is a start. So we would kind of come in here. And now remember I said I'm using npm. I can also use, if I try and use yarn, if I said something like yarn start, right, would it work? How about if, it says, hey, you either can use npm or yarn, go ahead. Okay, well, I used yarn start and it says React script start and it stopped, right? Notice that there's it says waiting. right? For this kind of stuff. Does this mean that it started? Well, no, look, it takes time to do it. And it starts a developer thing, and it starts off with a really cool thing on localhost 3000, guys. Notice localhost 3000? It started right here, right? So I used Yarn, and it worked. No problem, right? But you got to choose one thing or the other thing. So this is it. This is your React app right now. This is the default React app that you get, okay? Which is right here. Great thing is that this can be something that you can pull on the side, and you can do side-by-side creation, just like I talked about in the very first day. I said I probably would try and run things this way, right? Where I want to kind of have my React option, my React app on this side, and on the left side, it's kind of an active runner. All right, notice that I'm running a front end. It says you can now view front end in the browser, right, by looking here, okay? So, pretty cool. We don't need to see this right now, so I'm just going to turn it off. Things to note. This is the beautiful thing about using TypeScript with React. No transpile. You don't have to worry about it. It does take care of it for you, all right? So we don't have to worry about transpilation again with React on the front end at all. It does it all for you, okay? So I just code. That's the great thing about this. How does React work? Well, by default, the app .tsx file, this one, if in any way, is kind of like the entry point that links everything together. Actually, let's take one step back. Let's look at the stuff that we get. We get index.tsx. So the index.tsx, right, this is really where it starts off, all right? So index.tsx says, I'm going to create a root, and the root, we're going to call it root, right? Root as an HTML element. We're going to get that document by element by ID, and we're going to render. Root render is basically us constructing the application inside of something called app. So app refers to this app right here. When we can kind of make a function called app, right? Then what this creates is a custom element. All right, that's what it does. A custom element. And so anytime we call app like this, then that's where our application lives. It actually lives in here. And then taking one step back by going to public, if I go to my index.html page, this is my index.html page, and notice that it says React app, and that's what it says up here, React app. If I was going to change this to something like movie lists, or let's call it COMP229, watch, COMP229, right? And if I press save, then it automatically updates it. Look, it updated our title to COMP229. So index inside the public is my manifest, if you will, or the index.html page that I need to create my front end. I need this page, okay? And notice it says, here is my div with an ID of root. And if I go back to my index.tsx, it says, look for a element with an ID of root. Okay, cool. And save that element here inside of root. And then I'm going to do root render, and render, because that's part of React, render is going to create or generate my HTML pages inside of that element, which means if I go back up to my index.html, inside of this div tag, that's where everything is going to live, right here. All right, that's where it goes. So this is kind of the structure that we get by default. Okay, this is what we get. A couple of other things to note is we have a link, a couple of links up here. One of them is called manifest, right? And manifest points to this manifest.json. Our manifest.json talks about the icons we're going to use, the logo, which is this thing, as well as the start URL, if there's any, and the theme color. So if I wanted to make the theme color red, right, then that's what I want to start off with. I can also say background color, that's the theme color. If I wanted to make the background color red, so right now it's FFFF, just red, then I should be able to modify the background color right from here, right? Because that's what it's supposed to do. That's the manifest thing, right? And, right, it takes a second, but that's the thing that I want to be able to do. I want to change the background color. I want to change the theme color. That would change all here. But remember, this probably gets overwritten somewhere else. Okay, so let's see how it goes. So other things in the index.html, if you look here, is any other links as an example to anything else we have from a CSS perspective and so on. Okay, so index.tsx, that's in the source files down here, index.tsx. If I look there, you can see that I'm importing my index.css here. So index.css is the CSS for my entire application. Okay, that's the index.css. But I also have an app.css, and the app.css is for my app. Remember, so how it works is index.css is my high level one. App.css is more specific, and I can have more specific pages, another CSS file for each of my new pages that I want. Okay, but so here you can see that the background color, this background color is set up to be this gray color. So if I wanted to change the background color in my app header, then I can certainly change this to whatever color I want, right? Let's say something like blue, right? And that would change. So this is where the all that stuff gets changed up for how you want the thing to look. Okay, that's all the color and the theme and everything else. Okay, app links, how the app links look. And keyframes, this whole app.css thing is what makes this thing spin, because app logo spin will actually make it so that it rotates from 0 degrees to 360 degrees every frame. Okay, that's what it does. Okay, so that is the way. Now, so if I took this away, all of this would stop. So if I was to, let's say, remove it for a second, so I cut it out and save, right? You can see that that's what it would do. All right, that's the default that it would give you, this white background as an example, and this kind of this other color logo. And then if I went back to my index.css, you can see that it has some basic things for the font family and the margin and a bunch of other stuff here. And if I go back into my index.html, sorry, my manifest.json, and you can see that now here's the theme color and here is my background color. If I went to put this to like this, then maybe it's going to change colors, maybe not. But it's saved somewhere. This stuff here is saved in terms of how this thing works out, right? So here, let's just put it back. So if I put this thing back and save it, you can see we're right back to where we were. If I keep on doing, right, and save it again, right, we can see that we're back to the original app. So this is kind of how it looks the way it does and why it starts off the way it does. Okay, so that's my app.tsx. So index.tsx, again, is the structure of my app. It includes my index.css and my app. This is kind of the entry point for my entire application right here. And then app.tsx is my application, the application I'm writing. And I can include other things in here as well. So for example, right now I have a function, and this function app is automatically executed, right? Because if I go back to my index.tsx here, right, you can see that in the index.tsx, I import app. Look at that import syntax. We've been using this the entire time this semester. That's why I did it with you guys. Import app from app, right? So, okay, so there's app, and I'm executing it right here. So whenever I root render, the way it works is this is something called, so this is TSX, and the way it works is that it's going to render this app right here. This element, which is a custom element that comes from here. This is the custom element that I'm creating. It's going to render it or execute it. So this function then is executed. Now the only thing this function does is have a return. So notice that the return itself is in parentheses. Look at the parentheses here, right? Those parentheses. So it returns what? HTML, right? It looks like HTML, but actually, guys, just to say this again, this is not HTML. This is a snippet, and what it's going to do is React is going to take this and generate whatever thing I want here. So let's do some modification. Let's start off and think about what do I want to do with my app, okay, starting off. And if you think about it, right, my app itself, right, I want to be able to have a header and a footer. That's what I want to have for my application. So if I want my header and my footer to be separate objects, I would not do an app, kind of return in here, right? My render, which is happening right here, is actually something that I want to set up, by, let's just get rid of all this. So inside of this entire thing, see how it says class name is app? I want to keep this piece, but I really want to get rid of the rest. So all this part can go bye-bye. So save. And if I do that, you can see it's blank. All right, so I don't get anything starting off. So it's blank. I also want to, by default, let's just blank out the app.css because this is something that I want to do too. So let's get rid of all this, blank that out. So there's nothing in the app.css that's going to color what we're going to see here. First things first. Okay. What I can do is I can organize myself just like I have in the past with you guys, and I can create folders, a folder structure for myself to think about how I want to proceed. So that's the first thing I want to do with you. So let's minify the public, and inside the src folder, I want to create a bunch of folders to start off with, to start with my structure. So this is where I'm going to start. So I'm going to make a folder, and the first folder I'm going to make is authentication. Okay, we're going to build that in. Right now, it's going to be empty. Okay, I'm going to make a brand new folder, and let's call it components. And then that's going to be empty. And we're going to make another folder, and we're going to call that the movie list. Here's our movie list. And that's going to be empty. And we're going to make another one. We're going to call it content. Okay, and we're going to make another one, and it's going to be called services. And so we have all of this, and the last one is going to be called models. Okay, that's our folder structure. And I'll explain why in a second. But for the first part, and when we first start off, I want you to think about how we're going to separate our concerns. First thing we're going to do. And today, all I want to think about is I want to get that navigation going, and I want to have a nav bar and all that kind of stuff, and a header and a footer. So what we can think about is creating a header component. I want to make a header component. And if you think about this, if I want to add a component, all right, so in when I'm using something like, I'm just going to pull out another PowerShell here. If I want to create a component, right, as an example, in Angular, I can just add a component. So is there something like that? And if you've been watching the Angular movies and stuff, it tells you that. So is there a way of adding a component through Create React App? We have our build, we have our start, and everything else. And if you look at our package.json here that it comes with a bunch of scripts. React script start, React script build, test, and eject. Those are the ones we come with by default. It also has all of our dev dependencies and our dependencies in one spot right here. Okay. So these are all the things that we have. Okay. So what I want is, when we think about what I want to add in, the first thing I think about is, okay, cool. So how then do I add a component? Do I add it manually, or is there a way of adding it automatically? So if I go here and I say, create React app, add component, how do I do that? And if you were to do that, it says best way to create a new React component. And it says React.js also has components and props. You can see that this is a thing, but let's take a look and see what Stack Overflow says. This is 2018, and it says, okay, well, it says Mpx generate React CLI component. Now, this is back where it kind of did that, and it'll make a file called this, right? And it talks about this, and that's not really the best way. So let's go into this one, components and props. And it says functions and class components. We definitely want to go with the functional style. That's what we want to do, right? So that's what we want to create. And is there a funky way of doing it automatically? Like, is there a way of using a command line, kind of adding a component? Yes, there probably is. But what I recommend is let's just add it manually. So there isn't really a, a start where we can do it by hand necessarily that makes sense for us. Instead, what I recommend is if we go to components inside this folder, let's add in a brand new tsx file. So brand new file, and we'll call this thing something that makes sense for us, which is like something like header header.tsx. So if I was to do that, my header.tsx file, it automatically gives us an issue. This is a beautiful thing with React. It says, okay, it says we got a TSX and it says header TSX cannot be compiled. It's trying to compile this thing, but there's nothing in there because it says it is considered a global script file and an import, export, or empty statement to be a module. Okay, cool. So first thing we want to do is I want to import some parts to it. So I'm going to say something like import React, right? Let's do this. Import React from React. So that's the first part of the module. So save. And as soon as I do that, if I go import React from React, header becomes something that's usable. As soon as I do that, first part. Next, I want to make a function. And my function is going to be called header, right? Because that header function, remember what's happening is the header function, it's going to be the thing that is going to, kind of be returned, right? So I'm using functional code. That's what I want to do. And all React functions must have a return. All right. So again, I'm going to make a function and it's got to have a return. And when I have a return, all returns, anytime you see a React return type, all returns have to be, to have parentheses like this. Okay, so all returns have to have parentheses. Awesome, okay? And by the way, please do not separate the parentheses here. Don't put it on another line. Keep it like this, okay? And then all functions have to export themselves. So export default header, okay? That has to be in there as well. All right, so that's the return. And what do I want to put here, my friends? Well, we already have something to put here. We have a header information that we're going to put in here from the last time, except some of it is not going to be functional for now because we want to do it the React way. We don't want to do it the ESX or EJX way, okay? So, okay, how do I get that? So going back up to here into our front end, there's our back end. Here's our back end. I'm just going to look inside of our back end. And remember, I kept there our views. And I have components, header.ejs. Let's open that up in an editor, like edit. Just a separate editor like this. That's it. Look at this. This is what I want. I want to grab all of this stuff right here. And I want to copy it all. Here's copying all this stuff here, the last header I had, again, and I want to just populate it right in here. That's what I want to do. Boom. Okay. Now, there are going to be a lot of issues. Why? Because it doesn't understand EJS. It doesn't understand any of that stuff at all. Let's just maximize this page now just to make it bigger for you guys so you can see the problems. Okay, so it tells you a list of problems, and it's starting to identify things that doesn't make sense. So one thing is this, because we're generating the page, right, we can no longer use the term class. Class means something else. It means a class, like as in a TypeScript class or a C# class equivalent. It's a class. So we have to change anything that says class to class name. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to do. So we're going to Control A, select everything, Control F. So we're going to find anything and replace it, anything that says class on it like this. We're going to replace with class name like this. That's the first thing we're going to do. So anything that has class, it's going to be replaced with class name. Okay, and let's replace all, 32 replacements. That's going to take care of a pile of issues, guys, right away. So class to class name, okay? Notice all those errors went away. Now we have some issues down in here, okay? Because down in here we have a bunch of stuff that we look through, and what we're saying is we have this funky stuff with our login and logout and all this kind of stuff. And my thoughts are, for now, let's just remove all this piece. So we see we have a starting point. We're going to come back to this, and we already have it saved somewhere else, but we don't need it right now because we're not logging in and logging out. That would be an authentication piece. Okay, that's next. Next, so that's the first thing. So first thing is we've modified everything. We've made a return. We've got rid of all the classes, and we call them class names. And the next thing we want to do is we want to start converting. Okay. So here, what we have is we have a list item, and the list item says, well, what we want to do is we want to, it says our anchor tag, here's our anchor tag, and our anchor tag has a nav link, right? And then it has a class name of FA home, and it has all this junk here. This junk is no longer valid because this is all EJS again. So first of all, let's change all of our anchor tags, all of the anchor tags here. We want to change them to nav links, But we can't do nav links because we need, if we're going to change them to navigation links, we need another project that we're going to download and install later on called React Router DOM. Okay, so going back to package.json, you can notice that we have React DOM, and this is good, right? But what we need, instead of React DOM, only React DOM, we need React Router DOM, because I'm going to have my own front-end router eventually. Okay, that's what I'm going to do. So we need to add some additional libraries here. So one thing to note is that React is very modular, right? So, and what I mean by that is, let's save this. What I mean by that is when we look at our package.json is only including stuff that we need right now, starting off. But we're going to need more packages from React, and one of them is the React Router, right? React Router means I can do routing or changing pages from within my application. Okay. So that's what I'm going to do, and for me to do that, I need to add in another module just before we get going. So again, I recommend starting off like this because it helps us, kind of going forward. And for me, I always try and add in as many of the things that I need as I can, as I at the beginning as I can. So let's add it in. So first thing is we want to add in, and again, I want you to think about how this is going to work. I can do a yarn. I can do a yarn add. Here it is. And I want to do React DOM, React-DOM, and it's React Router DOM, which is what I want. React Router DOM. So that's what's missing up here. React Router DOM. Okay. So I want that. And if I was to do that and press enter, you can see immediately that I'm going to get the same functionality as I normally do. It's going to go through and it's going to add in React, kind of React DOM, or React Router DOM right away. Take a look at that. And I know I'm going through it and adding it in something right away and without showing you what it does yet, but I'm going to take this tack, and the reason for it is because there's so much to do as an example, and I want to make sure you guys know how I would start if I was going to code, like right from the beginning. And you can see it takes a little bit of time to go through it all. Remember what yarn does. What yarn does is there's two problems. There's a problem here, okay? So I'm using yarn, and I'm also using our package-lock.json. You can't have both. It's either going to be yarn or my npm, whatever you want. One or the other, but not both. So if we're going to use yarn like we've been doing on the front end, then we need to remove the package-lock.json in a second. There we go. All right, and what it does, it gives you this yarn lock. You can't have both lock files. So let's get rid of my package.lock.json. Let's delete it. All right, one or the other, guys. Okay. And so if I go to my package.json now, it gives me React DOM, React Router DOM, but I need a @types React Router DOM because I want support. All right. So again, going back up here, I want to say yarn add @types. I'm not going to separate this time. React Router DOM. So before, when we were doing our own project, we would do a -- dev. We had our dev dependencies and our dependencies in different spots. Here, I'm just putting it in one because that's the React way. Okay, there's React Router DOM. Okay, so that's two things that I've kind of added in. Okay, that I have those two parts in there. I know I'm going to use Bootstrap on the front end. I know I'm going to use jQuery most likely. I know I'm going to use font awesome. So those things I want to add in here too. So I'm going to say something like, this is all front end stuff, right? So I'm going to say yarn add bootstrap, right? I also want to add at fort awesome / font awesome free. That's something we added in last time, right? We also want to add in jQuery because we want to use jQuery for different parts as well. And I think that's a great start for things that I want to add in. Okay, so those are the things I want to add in. So if I did that and pressed enter, then you're going to have all those parts adding in there as well. And there's some warnings here that I'm ignoring. It says it needs Popper.js as a front end, and we always want to follow the recommendations that it needs. So if it says I need at Popper at core / core, let's add that in too. So yarn add / at Popper / core, right? And we should do that too. If I didn't do it right, Popper.js maybe. There we are. Because if we don't do that, then it's going to be an unmet dependency, which is what we need. Okay, so there we go. So there's at Popper / core, right? We need that. And now I think we have a way of starting, right? Because I think we have everything for the most part. I'm just looking at my code here, my notes. Everything for the most part that we need to get going. I don't think there's anything at this moment that we need. Okay. But yeah, but that's the first piece. Notice here what we have down here is it also has some additional kind of components down here where it tells us Chrome and Firefox and Safari and for development and browser lists and so on. That's just configuration details. We're not going to touch those, but I think for the most part we're ready to go with the next piece. Do you have that? Yarn package not found. Maybe I typed it in wrong, Elias. Let me just give you the code that I had. So I had this part. This is my code here. That's what I put in there. I'm not sure if you put in this. Maybe you typed it wrong. I know I'm going overtime, guys. So if you have to run away, I get it. I'm going to keep recording this so you have it. Okay. So hopefully you fixed that problem, Elias. Well, Fort Awesome was well written. Okay. I'm not sure why it shouldn't do that for you, for me. Maybe if you wrote 2 Fs on Fort Awesome. I don't know. Okay, so I'm looking at that right now. I'm not sure why it's Font Awesome instead of Fort Awesome Free. It's Font Awesome Free. I think you wrote it wrong. There it is. Okay, let's continue. So now that I've got the requirements, I'm going to go back to that component we were making. We're making this component, and like I said, whenever we want to navigate with React, we want to use some kind of router to do so. And so what I'm going to do for now is just to continue to move forward with my header, just so it doesn't take too much longer, is I'm going to start importing some stuff. So I'm saying, okay, I've imported React. That's cool. I'm also going to import, here's a new one. I want to import navlink. Here's navlink. And I want to grab that from, and here's the way it is, React-router DOM, which is what I want. Okay, so that's what I'm getting. I'm using the navlink from React router DOM. Okay, so that's the second import statement. Remember, navlink is a way of kind of navigation without using anchor tags. So all my anchor tags that I have in here, I'm going to swap out all the anchor tags and I'm going to change them to nav links. Okay, nav links. And you can do that by just typing. If I say something like nav link, and if I press tab, you can see that immediately what happens is it becomes a nav link. Visual Studio Code does that for you. So if I did that for all my anchor tags, I'm doing it carefully here, right? If I do that for all my anchor tags here, right? that's the first thing I want to do. And I'm not find replacing. I'm just kind of taking it one step at a time. Notice that on the right, all of those change. And the same thing goes for this anchor tag here for my brand. My brand also has to change. So it's going to be nav link. And then I have, one thing is that we have hrefs, right? So this href is something that's going to go away, and it's got to be, it looks a little different. So I'm going to start with the top. And nav links, the way they work is you have a nav link, and then you have a to, right? And then an equal sign, curly braces, and it's going to look something like this. Okay, so that's kind of what nav links look like this. So the way you would read this is this, whenever I click on the navbar brand, it's going to have a nav link to the home page as an example. Okay, so I'm going to grab this too, and I'm just going to put them in here. So a bunch of them. Okay, but obviously this is not how I want everything to be, because we have our hrefs over here. I'm going to kind of replace those hrefs. So copy. Oh, wow. What a delay. Copy. Wow. All right. Doesn't like me copy pasting for whatever reason. Maybe it's something that I typed. Doesn't matter. There we go. Wow. Wow. Craziness, man. Copy C. Okay. Wow. Okay. And then what we want to do is, again, we want to remove this href stuff from here. This is home about, and I'm just going to show you how this works. Home about projects and services and a bunch of other stuff. So we're going to get rid of all this. And we're just going to reposition this so it says, again, this is the home. This is the about page, if I'm not wrong. And this is the, so I just want to see what that is. Home about project services and contact. So projects, services, and contact. Okay, so that's the same thing. All the same, right? Home about project services contact. We don't need any of this nav link stuff. We can just get rid of all this stuff because this is garbage, because this is all from our previous code that we had with EJS. So this part we're getting rid of because it doesn't make sense for React as we're converting. All right, awesome. So that is the first part. First part is us making a header that allows us to move from, kind of one page to the other, right? And right now, all we have are a bunch of nav links, and they really don't go anywhere or do anything. Okay, that's kind of the first piece that we have in, okay? And then what we want to do is, now that we've saved the header, we want to use it, and we want to import this, because remember, when we make a header function, we also make a custom component. I just made a custom. Oh, sorry, you wanted that command, Elias? Sorry, it's this one. This one. That's the popper command. But again, it's just a warning. So I want to notice that the header, when I make a header component, I make a JSX element. Even if I hover over it, it tells me that the header is a JSX element. A JSX element means that it's a custom element, HTML element that I'm making right now called header. Okay, but we already have a header component, right? You're going to say, but not capital H header. Our header component in default HTML is lowercase header, H, lowercase h. So how do I use this in my app? Well, here's my app, right? And my app has to import my header somehow. That's what it's going to do. So again, this is just, if you know how to import stuff, then, well, it's pretty simple. So here at the top, what I'm going to do is just to start organizing myself, because I like to do this because it makes sense. I'm going to say these are my common components. So my common components are going to be an import header from, And if you notice, if I want to import it, is from ./components/header. That's how it looks. And that is the first thing I'm going to do. So here's header. I've imported my header, but I haven't used it in my application yet. Okay, I haven't used it yet. So, also notice that even though my header right now has Bootstrap stuff, I haven't added Bootstrap support in my app yet. Okay, and how do I add this? We'll talk about this in a second. But the first thing is, let's add the header without Bootstrap, and let's see if we can get the header going. I think right away is what I want. So that's the first thing. I want to add header. And then what I want to do is inside of my return statement right here, where I have my div class name app, right? What I want to do here is I want to have a header component come in right here. So I can say, hey, let's put in a header. And header represents my custom element that I just made, which is my header component right here. Okay, so what do I see now if I was to kind of go over here? Do I see my header, right? Because, I mean, I would like to see my header, but what happened, right? Is it still compiling? Is it building? What happened to this thing here? Is my stuff still running or whatever? By the way, if you ever want to, and if I go here, and if I do a yarn start again, just to restart my application. Sometimes it's required because we made some changes, right? If I want to do that, just wait for it, close these off, because what's going to happen is it's going to restart the application itself, okay? So the question for you guys is, okay, so I made my header, why don't I see it? That's the first thing. First thing you should say is, after I made it, I should see it right away. Give it a sec. Give it a sec, all right? So here's my development server, right? And remember what we want to do is we want to see my header. First thing we want to do. Now, there's some assumptions we're making in this video, guys. We're making an assumption that you know a little bit of TypeScript, okay? We're also making an assumption that you know a little bit of you've done import and export with ECMAScript module pattern. Okay, so then why aren't we showing this up? Well, remember that this thing here also has the ability for us to look at this. So if we go Control-Shift-J, and if I look through here, Control-Shift-J, you can see that there are some errors that come up. It says, okay, uncaught, use location may be used only in context of a router component, right? And that's what my nav link does. So it's saying, well, you can't really use a nav link. I used it in my header. That's what it says. You can't use nav link in the header unless you have a router. Oh, okay. Well, I don't have a router, right? So I need to add that in. So app.ts, go back to this. I want to add in a router. And again, what I want to do is at the top of my app, so I'm just going to make this bigger again. At the top of my app, the entry point again, right? Not my index, but my app. I'm going to make some spaces up here, and I'm going to say, okay, cool. I want to import, and here's where I'm going to go. I'm going to say I want to import browser router. Here's my browser router. I want to import browser router from React DOM. I also want to import route as well as routes. Okay, I want to import those three things. So browser router, route, and routes from React DOM. That's the thing, the first thing I kind of put in there. And this gives me functionality for doing routing for my application. Okay. So here inside of where I had my header, what it's asking for is something called a browser router, right? So between my div tags, I'm going to put in browser router, and it's going to be like this, browser router. And I want to take that browser router and I want to encapsulate my entire project with it. So there's browser router. Okay, save. Do I get it now? Is that enough? Do I have to actually have anything else other than this to make my header work? Again, let's take a look. So again, I'm just going to do one of these. And yeah, look, I got my routes, but there's no Bootstrap at this time. Why? We haven't imported it. Unless we import Bootstrap, then there's no router whatsoever. There's no styles here for Bootstrap. So how do I do that? And then we'll put this up on GitHub in a second. Okay. Oops, wrong way. That's fine. So how do I do that? Well, I've imported my routes. I've imported some logo and other stuff. Question is, will I use this logo in my app? And the answer is no, so we don't have to do that. So we can remove that. But I definitely want to add some styles. So let's add styles and fonts, right? And I don't want to do it here. I'd rather do my import statement after my header, like down in here. I'm just organizing my app structure right now, okay? So yes, I have my app.css. That will come last. And then I want to add in Bootstrap. So how do I do that? I'm going to say import, and I'm going to go Bootstrap, right? And then /dist, just like this, bootstrap /dist /css /bootstrap, right, .min.css. That's the CSS part for Bootstrap. And then I'm going to go import at Fort Awesome, Font Awesome Free. You can see it comes up, /CSS it doesn't give me more, but I know it's all .min.css. So that gives me Bootstrap as well as Font Awesome. And let's save. And if I go back and show it to you now, you should see my old little, kind of thing that I had before, exactly how we had it before. Okay, now checkpoint. Are you with me? Understanding. Do you guys get what I'm doing here? How I'm putting things together, right? So React is funny in that you have to kind of create your components. I recommend them being organized, okay? Sure, could you not have these folders? The answer is you don't have to have folders, all right? You don't have to have anything, right? Any kind of structure. I'm making it structured because it makes sense for me to organize myself. Okay, Elias, you're good? I'm going slow too. All right, but none of these little links work. If I go home, again, or about or whatever, it doesn't error out, but it doesn't go anywhere either, okay? It doesn't go anywhere, any of these things. If I wanted to have a home page to give me some data, then down inside of my app, inside of here, what I want is to include a router, okay? So it's like I want to include client-side routing. And there's a way of doing the, if I want to make comments come up, by the way, sorry about that. If I want to make comments, I can't use regular comments in here. I'm going to use a curly brace followed by comments. So this is how you do comments in React inside of the HTML code here that we're writing, okay? So this would be like client-side routing. How do I do client-side routing? Well, I need to set up routes. And what I want inside of this is a div with a class name of container, right? So we'll say a div. Again, you don't have to have this, but let's suppose I did a div and I want to add a class name of container. Remember what class name does? Oops, let's undo those changes. If I put div with a class name of container, that means all of my content is going to have a container wrapped around it. So I don't want this, so I'm not going to put that in. Okay, but I could, just like before. But what I really do need is I need routes. So if I do routes, then routes is kind of a list of routes. And if you look at this as XML instead of HTML, right, then you know that for every route, there's going to be a route, at least one route. So let's make a route. Route looks like this, route. And a route would have a couple of parts to it. Routes are also, something to note about routes is they're self-closing. So if I do a route, then it's self-closing, like this. That's a self-closing tag. And I can say that the path for the route is / and the element for the route, as an example, is the custom element that I want to go to. Now, question is, do I have any kind of content for my home page right now? And the answer is, I do not. I don't have content for my home page. Let's add it in under content. And this is the last thing I'll do before I put it up on GitHub, because we need to be able to test at least one of these things that work. Okay. So let's do that. So under my content page, I know this is a big one, a big kind of update. I want to add in a home.tsx page. So again, here, new file, home.tsx. Here's my home.tsx. Okay. Remember that my home.tsx needs some requirements. And here's how they work. I'm going to say import React from React. We need that part always. And I also want to import, this is new, I want to import a link. Links and nav links are different. Nav links are in a navigation bar. Links are just regular links, right? Import a link from, kind of a React router DOM, right? So React router DOM. Okay, so that's the second thing I want to do. Then I need a function, the name of my new component, home. Okay, the name of my component is important because that's what it's going to look like when I make a custom element. Okay, this is my custom element name, and my function is going to have a return type. Okay, my return type, and my return is going to have parentheses. This is all the same stuff. And at the bottom, I'm going to have an export default home, capital H, because I need to export my module, because this is a module I'm making, if you think about it. I'm using functional module pattern is what I'm doing here. Okay, so what does my home link look like? Well, we can look at my old pages again, right? So if I go back to my desktop, and if I go to here, and if I look inside of my backend, my server, it's not much, by the way, views, and if I go to content home, here's my home content. And if I open it up in an editor, right, again, I'm going really slow here. It just has this part. Okay, that's all it has. So, let's grab this, but there's no title. You can't use title. So really, there's not much inside of home that I had before. So I can just recreate it by myself. All right, so there's not much in home, so let's make our own. So we need a div tag. And inside that div tag, I want some kind of h1 tag, right? And my h1 tag is going to have a class name. Here's my class name. And my class name is going to be an MB-5, so margin bottom 5, where I'm going to say something like, welcome to our site. Welcome to our site, right? That's going to be what we want to say there. And remember, what I want to do a lot of times is wrap my stuff in a class name that is container. Remember, class name is instead of class, because it does, our active HTML, which is what's happening here, which is our generated HTML, thinks that class means a class or a function. Okay, that's what it means. So that's why we need to use class name instead. All right, cool. And remember, we had a button that takes us to our next page, right? So we had some kind of like button, right? So the button might be a button that is something that looks like this button, and a button could have a class name. If I was going to make a bootstrap button, it would have a button, button primary as an example, and maybe it's going to have a little bit of a name like, something like learn about us one day when it decides to respond to my backspaces about us. Right? Learn about us. And then, the button, well, it's not going to go anywhere, but we can add a link to it. And this is what the link would look like. So we can say link. And what I want to do with the link is I want to wrap the button inside of it, or wrap the link around the button, depending on how you want to say that. So the link would have a link to, and then the link to would have a /about. That's how it would work. So the link would be an href equivalent, right? And it speaks to the router. So link says, okay, this is a link. And what we're going to do is we're going to move, when I click on this button, it's going to move us to the About page if it existed. Save. So that is my first page that I've made. And let's see if it actually works when I connect it to my router. Does this make sense so far for you? I think, again, steps are we make a function. The function has a return type. The return type includes some HTML we're going to inject into the page. That's how it works. A little bit different in terms of how it works in terms of functional programming. And then when I go back to my app.tsx, here I have my root path equals, and I need some kind of, for where it's going to go. Sure, this is the root path, but where is it going, Tom, is what you're going to say. And the answer is I want it to go to my home page, but I don't have a link to my home page up here. Let's add it in. So again, we want to say that this is my content components. And here I can say I'm going to import my home from, and where is it going to come from? Right? So dot slash content, right? Here's content slash, and then home. So that's where it kind of comes in. So my content components are here, my common components are here, and home, now that I know what home is, I can use it in my route. So I can say in my routing, here's what a route looks like, complete now. I can say the element for this is going to be, this is my custom element that I'm defining, is going to be home, right? And it's a self-closing element, typically a self-closing tag. And that's it. That is what a route looks like on the front end. It has nothing to do with the back end. We're not even touching the back end right now. All we're doing is making kind of the front end. And if you think about it, I have two routes here. I need this one, and I also need another one, which says home. So there's the home route. If I do home or slash, it takes me home. That's what it does, okay? And let's see how that looks. So again, if I go to the right, you can see now I have the content, welcome to our site, and I have this link that takes me to About, okay? About doesn't do anything right now, neither does projects or services or contact. There are errors, that doesn't show anything, but home now works. Look at that. Look how brilliantly that works for us, right? Learn About Us actually takes us to our About page, and notice how About is instantly highlighted, instantly. I don't have to worry about highlighting any of these links. It's done for me. That's why we could take all that stuff out like we did last time. So super easy in terms of the way this works. Okay. Okay, let's put this up on GitHub. Now we have something to put up on GitHub. All right, so we're going to say, so lots of changes, right? And we're going to say git add dot, right? Git commit -m, and we'll say created, you know, kind of our front end version 1. Git push. And this will push everything up to your GitHub repository where you should have all the code I just put together. Questions so far? I want to do one more thing, and then I know we're going over today because we went a little over when it came to some explanations for the for your project, and I want to go a little bit over. I'm sorry to make a longer recording, but I want to go a little bit over so you can see a little bit more of what we have. Okay, so any questions so far? So to me, I think it's really super simple. Once we set this up, I know this is a little bit of overhead when we start off, and understanding how things link together. That's also, you know, kind of a thing. But if you think about it, right, if my index is my root, index.tsx, and it calls upon app, and if app includes a header for every page, here's my header. Let's make a footer. So what would the footer look like? Well, it's going to be here in my component, right? So that's where I would put it in there. So under components, footer, right? That's what I want to do. Let's do that. So right click, I want to add a new file. I'm going to call it my footer.tsx. There it is. But again, it's going to error out unless I have an import React from React. I think this is pretty simple to type in. And then I need a function that is called footer. All right. And inside my function, it's going to return, right, something. There's my return type. and I'm going to go export default footer. That is my default component. That's what my components are going to look like every single time. Notice, every single time it's like this. Okay, excellent. I like it. And what is my return type going to look like for my footer? Well, again, we can always go back and see if we can grab some stuff from here instead of reinventing the wheel, because we don't want to type in anything if we don't have to. So here's my footer. I'm just going to edit it. And my footer looks like this. Okay. So I'm going to grab this whole nav link thing, grab this whole thing, and replace the stuff that I need to replace. And I'm going to go back into my return and just populate that in. Now remember, it doesn't like the class stuff. So when I copy stuff across from EJS, I need to change my class to class name, right? Make sure you spell it right. Class name. And once I've done this, I mean, I'm really good to go with my footer. But you know what? Let's import this now into my app. So again, if I go back to my app.tsx, just like before, I'm going to import it. Right? That's pretty simple stuff so far. And what I want to do is, if you think about the structure of my app, I have my header here, some content that goes here. This is where the content goes, right? And then that's what this is, by the way, routes. And this part, it actually injects the content right here, okay? And then finally at the bottom, I'm going to put in my footer. All right? So if I did that and saved, and then take a look at what my thing looks like now, then we should have a footer. So kind of, there it is right here. So my footer is instantly put into place. Instantly. So again, doesn't matter which page I'm on, my footer is there, right? And let's talk about what if I wanted to put in some code, right, so that it automatically knows what date it is. How do I do that, right? And this is where you have a lot of flexibility. So we're going to just depart. With this example, I'm going to depart from the basic things of doing stuff, and let's expand our functionality a little bit. So remember, we have our function, but I want you to think about our function as a component. So this is really our footer component. Footer component. Okay, that's what it is. And it's a footer React component. Okay, that's what it is. Well, that means that if it's a component, it can have its own functions. Think about our component as a class. Because we're doing functional programming and class programming in this case, we can put a function within a function. And let's call this function something like, I don't know, get data. Or get dates, sorry, get date. And it's going to return a number, because guess what? It also supports TypeScript, right? So what I can say is, we can make a new date. Let date is equal to a new date. Okay, so we make a brand new date object, just like we normally would in JavaScript. And then what I can say is, let's return date.getFullYear, which is how we would return a date, the full year object itself. So this way, this little function getDate returns the full year, okay? Awesome. How do we import this getDate function inside of our code? Remember, this is generated code. How do I put this in the nav bar now? It's super simple, guys. Like I'm talking like you're gonna love this, right? We replace the 2022 with curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we put in getDate and call that function. And we're good to go. That's it. So anytime we want some kind of data inside of our HTML code, we just have to put curly braces. And this is one way of doing it. All right, cool. So this imports the year inside of here. And if I was to save this and then go back out to our code, we can still say it still says 2022. If I wanted to prove this, that it works and it's not some fluke, let's change the code. So instead of just getDate, I want to say getDate plus 1. And if I press save, it's going to say 2023. See? How about if I just said 1? If I just deleted this getDate and just put in 1, then it's going to say 1. See, it kind of injects whatever value I want in there, which is pretty cool, right? So that's what I wanted to show you. So it's really excellent the way it works in terms of injection of data, right? Well, that gives us a lot of range right now. If I can do that with dates, with a function or data, wow, I have a lot of ideas what I can do with my app already, right? Okay, cool. Let's put this up on GitHub. So again, I'm going to go to here. I'm going to say clear git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added footer component. Git push. Footer's done. Nice. This is why I love React. React is super simple, right, in terms of getting it done. And it looks great, okay? Next week, we'll talk about how to connect our front end to our back end. Today, we're just making a bit of our front end to get going with, all right? And then we don't have a lot more time, but we'll just do a little bit more, maybe 20 more minutes, and then I'll stop, guys. So we'll go an hour over total. Again, if you guys got to run away, it's okay. I'm recording this session. All right, great. So now that I've added this in, we've got our component. Let's add in our other content components. I mean, really, they're super simple right now for me, and I want to be able to just test stuff out. So I want to be able to do stuff with my about, my contact, my projects, and my services page. Let's do that now. Okay, so let's add them in. So I'm going to go with my about page first. And again, I'm going to go import React from React, first thing. And then after that, I'm going to make a new function called my about function. There we go. The function is going to have a return, right? And the function is going to be also exported. Okay. So that's how that works. We need to fill this part in. And what will that part look like? Well, we're just going to say something like the return with the title. So we'll say something like a div tag. Can I use Emmet? How about that? Well, one thing to note is on the bottom, it says the language mode is React, TypeScript React. Okay, that's what it does. So I can always switch it if I wanted to use Emmet to HTML, if I really want to. Okay, so there's my HTML. So if I said div dot, and if I tried to do that, you can see that how that aborts everything, right? Because it doesn't really understand everything. So I can try that, I said. But if I want to go to TypeScript React, which is this, right? This is the type. No, now we get code coloring and code hinting. So I really want to do a div as an example. And inside that div, I want to do an h1 tag. And that works if you just go and do that. Don't worry about getting code hinting. It does carry about Emmet. So I'll say something like about us. And then maybe some kind of horizontal rule, right? And inside there, a paragraph tag, which is, here is detail about us, right? Whatever that detail is. And this is pretty cool, right? So this is our about. And I want to include this in my app.tsx, just like before. So I can say something like, okay, here's my content. So it's going to be import about. And by the way, if I go about and just take it easy, notice that there is about and it says content about. If I press enter here, it just does it for me. So if you don't do what I did and just don't rush and just give yourself some time to get code hinting, it'll actually do the completion for you, which is pretty cool, right? All right, so cool. So now there's about, and I want to add a new route. How will this look? Well, it's going to be the exact same. I'm going to say route, and the path is going to be /about, and the element is going to equal to our about element, right? So that's what it's going to look like, right? And that is the new route for about pages. There we go. So that's the about route. And now that the about route is there, if I go back to here and click on about, then we're going to get instantly this part. And we notice that there is no container. We need to put the container back. Let's put the container back, the Bootstrap container, around this. So again, going back to our about, it's a simple change. I can just go class name is equal to container, save, and automatically we're going to get that Bootstrap style applied, right? So that's pretty cool. And instantly we can go from here to about, and we can go from here to about as well. Notice that that is working. Okay, cool, but wouldn't it be nice if we had our title up here somehow? it'd be nice if, the title came up every single time. If I went from home to about, I don't want it to say COMP229. I want it to say whatever my title is of my page. How do I do that? Well, there is a interesting, method we can call in from React, and it's called useEffect. Okay, so this is kind of a really interesting, thing starting off. So useEffect is, it basically is almost like reactive programming now. Okay, so what happens is when I come to our application, I'm going to use an effect. That's what it's like. It's almost like the start method, or a constructor. Think about it as when I come here and I construct this function for the first time, this component, I want to call the constructor function. Calling the constructor function in my mind is like using effect. So in order for me to have useEffect work, it looks like this. Okay, so instead of import React from React, we can say import React, comma, and then we also want to use effect. Use effect. I want to import that functionality. That's how it's spelled, use effect. And I know it's a funky name. It would be nice if it was called something like start. That'd be nice and easy. But use effect is basically saying I have an effect that I want to activate when I go to this component. Okay? And the way you code that looks like this. I can say something like, hey, use effect. And useEffect is I'm going to call it like this, right? So I'm going to call useEffect. And what I can do is I can have, I can use some lambda expression or a fat arrow expression that looks like this. And I can say that when I call the useEffect function, I want to change the document.title, right? So that it is equal to about us. Okay? And if I was to save that, automatically look on top here, it's changed to about us. So that's what useEffect does. UseEffect gets called instantly when I call the about component. That's what it does, okay, instantly. So that's what useEffect does. And it'd be nice if we had useEffect for our other component, which is our home component. So I'm just going to copy and paste this, copy this, go into home, go here, kind of go in there, and plop in useEffect. And instead of, now notice if I did this way, and I'll come in there, it'll say something like, hey, don't you mean that you want to update your import? And the answer is, I can do it that way too, where React will automatically import the useEffect component in here, or the useEffect package, if you will. All right, so instead of my document title being about us, we can say this is our home page, right? So that's what we want. And, something like home would be nice. And you can't see it unless you go home. So let's go home. And you can see now that says home. So home, about. Look at that, how beautiful that is, right? Home and about. Nice. Okay, so very simple ways of putting together content pages. And then all your content can be in here. Here's a demo of a link, which we showed you before, any kind of linking stuff or whatever. And that's cool. And let's put this up on GitHub. So again, git at dot. Git commit -m, we'll say added about page. Okay, git push. There we go. Okay. Do you guys have more time? Should I stop? Because I'm here at 11:18. I can go for another 12 minutes and then I'll stop for sure. Should I continue and get the content pages going for you? What are your thoughts, guys? And again, this is for the people here. How many more minutes? About 12 minutes, Ricardo. I probably would go only 12 more minutes. Okay. You'll wait. As long as I have someone wants to see it, I'll do it. All right, so that's nice. So I've got my about page. That's awesome. How about if I want to do my my other pages? Well, it's very simple. And again, let's do my projects page and my and what I'll do is I'll copy paste my projects and my services page from my about page because they're almost identical. Okay, so again, I'll just do a copy paste and I'll call this, kind of, it's going to error out for a second, but I'm going to call this the projects.tsx. and I'll copy paste, and we'll call this services.tsx for now. So those two are pretty easy. So projects, this would just be renamed projects. Okay. So the projects function, right? So that's something that I have to do. And it's going to export projects. That's why it gave me an issue. Oops. There we go. And that's projects. So far, it's identical. So this will be our projects here, our projects, which will also be something that it says here, our projects on the document title, our projects. And, you know, maybe what we want to put in is here's the detail for our projects, okay? Whatever your projects would be here, right? Okay, so our projects, and this is the projects page. Same thing with services. This would change to services, and this would go services here. And this would be our services. Oops. And same thing over here for our title. By the way, you can always inject the title here by using curly braces. I'm just not doing it right now. And here's detail of our services, about our services. Did I put for our projects? Sure. Here are details for our project. Here is detail about our services. Sure. That's fine. As long as there's something different there. So it shows you. So there's projects and services. And how do I add those in? App.tsx. I'm importing them first. So, oh, by the way, sorry, there's another way of doing this as well. So instead of importing them first, you can actually write the route. You can say, I want to make a route with a path of projects, right? And an element that is equal to, oops, slash, and notice it says what I have here already. And I can say that this is our projects, right? And when I do that, if I do it right, me being dumb, projects. And it says, hey, I don't know what projects are, right? And it says, do you want to import it? And boom, it gets imported right away. So that's another way of doing it. So it'll actually import the stuff for you instead of you doing it by your hand, by yourself. But I like doing it this way. Import services, services, enter. And that's kind of a quick way of doing it. So you import it first, and then you can always copy paste one of these, right? And then just change the names, right? So I can say something like projects, and this will be services, and this will be services here, right? And now we have our projects and services in play too, and I can test those right away, because if I go to projects, save, if I go to projects, it'll say our projects, services, it'll say our services. So I got home, about, project, services, all nice. Isn't that a beautiful thing? Wonderful. Okay. Right, last one is our contact page. So again, I want to add a new. Now for this one, I might as well just copy one of these. So let's just do services, copy paste. I want to spend a little bit more time here with this one. So let's just rename this to contact.tsx. This will be our contact page. Contact component, right? Contact us is what it's going to say. Contact us. And this will say contact us too. Okay. And in here, maybe what we want is some kind of form. Okay. So I don't think we made a contact page together. Let's take a look. I don't think we did that. So if I look at the contact page, I think it's like empty, like the other ones, right? So let me give you a contact page that you can look at so that you can see what it might look like in the same way. And I'm just going to copy paste this code that I have here. Hopefully it'll work. And I'm going to put this right inside of, you know, the chat. Maybe it can't work. Well, I'll copy it here and then I'll post this in a second, okay? Because this way you don't have to do it by yourself. So let's contact us. That's fine. This part is okay. I'm just going to replace the contact us part with this part. And then I'll give it to you in a second. Okay. So, so here's the contact us. Class name is container. And all this is a bunch of form controls that are going to show you what it looks like, right? It says link, can't find. We want to, any kind of links will be React, route, or DOM. We can add that in right away. So we can take care of all the requirements, from this thing right away. Okay, so that's kind of what the contact page will look like. Save. And let me give you that page so you can see what it looks like. Here's our contact page. I'm just going to go to here. And I'm going to go to SRC and go to content. And I'm going to get that contact.tsx page and pull it across. Thanks, Bhupinder. Sorry about keeping you long. And now that I have that contact page inside my app.tsx, I'm going to import it just like normal. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go import contact. And we got that. And then what we can say is at the bottom, we'll copy paste just to make it quick, save us some time. And this will be contact. And this will be contact in here. And that's our contact page in place. And you can see what it does. If I click contact, it gives me a little form. I got this extra show contact list. And that would be nice if you had a contact list, but I don't. And I can always remove this thing by just removing the link. So how does this work? I can go back to our contact page and I can remove any link that I want, right? So this would be the contact list link right here if there was such a thing. This could be a movie list. I can replace this with movie list if I want to, but that doesn't make sense that it would be here. So I'm just going to get rid of this, and you can see how fast and beautiful updates are. It just removes stuff that I don't need, right? So beautiful. Okay, so that's the contact page. Nice and easy. We made it, and it's a full contact little form that you can have for yourself. And let's put this up on GitHub. So again, just going to hide that part. Oops. And I'm going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say something like added contact form. One more thing, and I'm done. Git push. So that gives me my contact, my projects, and my services. That's more content pages. Last thing. Okay, so what about if I went up here to my contact page and I put something like gobbledygook? It doesn't do anything. It just gives me this page, a blank page. It'd be really nice if I was going to get feedback that basically says 404 not found, something like that. So it'd be nice if we had some kind of 404 page, and I recommend it. And I'm going to call this thing page not found. Okay, so let's go back to our drawing board. And here in content, I'm going to add in a new file, and we're going to call this new file page not found.tsx. It's going to be very similar to what we did before, right? So again, just a repetition, import React from React, right? We also want use effect, because I know that that's what I want. So I want use effect. Okay, use effect is going to give me that start function that's going to come off almost like a constructor function. It's going to come up and say function is page not found. I want that. So just like any other thing that we did, we're also going to come back here and export default the page not found. And inside here, we're going to return, some HTML. And the HTML that we're going to do is there's going to be a div with a class name, that's going to be container. And there we go, it does it for us. And an H1 tag that is going to have error 404, page not found. So a custom 404 page that comes up. For our use effect, so use effect, just like before, we're going to have a fat arrow function, which is like a lambda function, that is just going to basically say our document.title is going to equal to error 404. Okay. And that is my page not found page. Okay, cool. How do I use this page not found page with my router? So anytime I don't have a route that's found, I want to fix it. Okay, that's what I want to do. So let's save. Let's make sure that everything is saved. What's going on here? Why is this giving me a warning? Oh, link isn't used. Haha. Took that out, right? So we don't have to use that anymore. All right. So yeah, so how do I do that? So if I go to my router, back to my app.tsx here, and if I want to implement the code not found stuff, then the way it works is that I need a route to a catch-all that catches all the routes at the bottom. And the way this looks, it looks like this. I'm going to say route. Actually, let's just copy paste just to make it quick because you guys are running out of time. And I promised Ricardo we'd be done, right? Man, I hate that. There we go. So the path is star, actually. So I want to catch all. This is after everything else. If it's not one of these, and if it's something else, I want to catch this. The element is page not found. It's that simple. Page not found. So if I do that and press enter, it actually imports it for me, like I said, right here. And I can just put that in place. And if everything goes well, take a look. That is the structure that I have. I have all my imports here. We're nice and organized. And let's see if this works. Notice that it goes page not found if there's something that doesn't exist. So again, let's check this out now. So COMP229, that works. Homepage works, about works, projects work, and it changes all of our titles, services, contact, all those things work. Look at that. It's a beautiful thing, right? But if I put in some odd thing like this, it's going to say 404 not found. It's a beautiful thing, guys. All right. And that is where I want to start with you in React. Okay. So that's good. Let's put this up on GitHub and we're done for the day. So it's kind of an intro to React. Git add dot, git commit -m. We'll say added custom 404 page. Git push. Any questions around this part? Right. So to sum up, React is great because it gives you a really cool starter that you can modify easily. All right. And that's what we kind of did. Right. The entry point for React, there's two really. There's the index.html, which is kind of like your manifest. This is the manifest of your entire application. Again, we can change all of these icons with anything we want. Okay. By default, it comes up with a favicon. And the favicon looks like this. We can change this favicon so it's our own. And that's why the top of our pages look like that, okay? Number one. So that's our index.html. Index.html is where the root div tag is positioned, and that's where everything is injected. Everything goes in line 31. The entire application is living in here, okay? We start with our index.tsx, and I recommend TypeScript because it's so easy to use, right? And then in our app, our custom app element is where everything begins. So this is just our bootstrapper. And bootstrapper is different than bootstrap in that this is where everything starts. It kind of initializes all the requirements for us to get going with. Okay, this is what this index.tsx does. And for the most part, we won't be touching this the entire semester. Okay, and then finally in our app.tsx, we import all of the components we need. We talked about how to make a component. We started with our components with our header. And the first thing we did was we have to import React. We create the name of our component, which is our custom element. We need a return statement with parentheses, which is new. Normally we don't have parentheses in a return statement, but here we do, right? And then at the bottom, our export default, the name of our component, our custom component. Once we have that, we can import it inside of our app.tsx, just like so. It's a module, is what we made our custom component module, and we're importing it in here. And then what we wanted to do is we set up a very simple router automatically. Now this is optional. Everyone does this a little differently. Some people don't like to use the router, in your front end. Some people use the back end for routing. I like to use a separate front end from the back end. My front end now does not depend in any way whatsoever on the back end. There's nothing. It's purely front end. I can run this on any site that supports React, okay? And it has nothing to do with my back end whatsoever. And this is how I like to do it. Separate concerns, front end from back end, okay? So that's why we imported some new stuff. Package.json, what we did at the beginning is we started to import a couple of things. And the first thing we imported was our React Router DOM. React Router DOM allowed us to do routing. And we also imported both the type definition library to give us code hinting, as well as the React Router DOM component from npm. And that's really all we've done. Oh, one more thing. In our app.tsx, if I want to include global styles, like for example, Bootstrap or Font Awesome, then I would include them here, okay? And when I include them here, they're included for every page, which is awesome too. That means as soon as I include them here in my app, that means because app is going to be rendered in my index.tsx page, it kind of does a recursive rendering. Now the last thing, I can also override any of my app styles with my index.css. So this is something that starts off. Index.css is the first thing. Then app becomes more specific. Then I can make my own custom CSS just like this in every of my components. So for example, in my content, if I wanted a custom home.css, I would just import ./home.css in here, okay? And I can make my own custom CSS. I can make one CSS page if I want per component. It's totally fine. And it'll all compile it and link it all together at the end. All right, any questions, concerns, misunderstanding, or anything else like that? Are you still unclear on how this all links together? So this is kind of the way we ran it. And the beautiful thing about this is we have a responsive little server that's running. We don't need NodeMon or Light Server. It runs it right here. It builds everything, and this is the way you would run it. Okay, guys, that's it for me for today. I know there's a lot we covered. We went about an hour and a bit overtime. Sorry, Ricardo. I tried to stay within the hour. And I wanted you to have at least an intro on how React is put together. And next week we'll get together, finish off the React front end, and we'll connect it to the back end. All right? Any questions before we go for the day? Any other questions? Okay, Ricardo, thanks so much. And everyone else too, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week. Good luck on this week's stuff. Remember, start working on your authentication pages. They're going to be due in a couple of weeks. All right, otherwise, that's it for me today. Thank you so much, guys. I'll stop recording this on YouTube.